Hello and welcome to Tangerine. This week I'm joined by Jesse. Is that what you want me to call you? By your name?
Yeah, that's okay.
It's the first video you've ever been on. Of course, we've
Yeah, it's
always
fine.
had. Tony's not here because we're going to be talking about two games, Hellblade 1 and 2, which we've both played on Game Pass.
Yeah.
And I said to Tony before we started recording, um, do you want us to go into this? Because Hellblade 2 directly follows on from the story of Hellblade 1, and we're gonna have to talk about the resolution of Hellblade 1 to talk about Hellblade 2. Because like when you load up Hellblade 2, there's literally like a cutscene that says, "Here's what happened in Hellblade 1," in case you haven't
Yeah,
played
yeah,
it, because
yeah.
it's a carry on. So just to let
Yeah,
you
I
know,
forgot about that.
we're gonna start with Hellblade 1. We'll and then spoiler free. Then we'll go into spoilers for Hellblade. Because I think the story and everything, like the psychosis angle, is really interesting to talk about.
Yeah,
And
yeah, for sure.
then Hellblade 2 will go spoiler free because the game's just come out, and then we'll go into spoilers because I think it's really interesting to go into all of that stuff. And I don't know, I think
And they'll all be time stamped.
you are very much interesting to talk about with psychology stuff. I don't know if
Yeah,
you want to
for
go
sure.
into that at all, but
Yeah, of course. I
um,
mean, um, I'm sure everyone knows by now. I mean, the game's been out. The game is about a person who's going through an episode of psychosis, and it's obviously interesting for me to play as a psychology teacher. And one of
yeah,
the modules that I teach A-level students is about schizophrenia, which it's always interesting. It's always funny talking to people. I don't often correct people, but I thought
yeah,
I'd say it here is people just use the word schizophrenia to reference an episode of psychosis, but
yeah, but it's
psychosis and
not.
schizophrenia are not the same thing. They're different,
So
because there's many psychotic disorders, and schizophrenia is just one of them. So that's always funny to hear
because
people say.
another thing that's really cool about this game was after you play it, there's a documentary that you can watch,
Yeah,
and I think we
yeah, I
watched
love
both of
those.
these,
Yeah, I'll
and
watch both.
I think it gets really interesting because they bring on real
Yeah,
psychologists from I think because
yeah,
Ninja Theory is based in Cambridge, which is really
yeah.
funny to watch because I was like, oh yeah, Cambridge Hospital, I know where that is. Like I clapped, I
Yeah.
understood that reference. Yeah,
Yeah, so in the documentary they bring on the Cambridge professor for oh, was it? I think it was something neurological. But anyway,
yeah,
yeah, and they also bring on and they talk to. So yeah, Ninja for Theory talk to many patients and recovering people recovering from psychotic disorders.
mm. I
So that
think
was really fun. They were really fun to watch.
I think what's really cool was I have a much better understanding of psychosis than I did going into these games.
Oh yeah, yeah, that's fun.
Like I think the general things that I didn't understand about psychosis that I have a better understanding now is it's almost because it's like, well, you understand it's not real, but to the people suffering it, it is real.
Mm.
It is like
Yeah,
happening.
yeah,
Like I heard like stories of they talk about stories of people who see dead bodies hanging and they're so real to them they try and pull them down and take them down from the
yeah,
ceiling and
yeah.
stuff like that.
I watched a video the
Um,
other day that of this guy, obviously on YouTube or TikTok or whatever it was, and he has this dog that helps him with his disorders. Like, because when if he thinks he sees people, he will give a command to the dog to go and greet the person.
yeah,
And if the person's real, obviously the dog will go and greet the real person. But if the person's not real and it's just a hallucination that he's having, then
yeah.
he can look at the dog and see if the dog reacts when he goes greet,
Oh,
go
that is
greet, you
quite
know.
interesting.
And I thought that was really fun, fun thing.
That's
But yeah, you do
that
learn a
works
lot.
until the dog has a psychotic break and he starts seeing the people.
Yeah, yeah. But you do learn a lot. It's fun to hear you say that you've learned stuff about it from
Well,
playing the
another
game
thing
and
I
then
want to talk about
subsequently
now
watching
is
the
we should
documentaries.
maybe because we've been talking about psychosis for like 4 minutes and we haven't even described
Yeah,
the game yet.
yeah. Do you want to do that?
Senua's Sacrifice is about I guess it's like what are they called? The early English people. They're
Yeah, I think
like
this is set in like late 1300s, early
I think
1400s.
she's loosely from watching the documentary she's loosely based on like a mythic warrior woman who did exist
Oh yeah,
somewhere in
I forgot about
England.
that. Yeah,
But it's basically the Vikings come over, they fuck shit
yeah.
up,
The
and
Northmen, I think they're
the
called. Yeah,
Northmen, as they're called, yeah, which I only really understood the Northman as a reference to the film that came, like there was an A24 film called The Northman.
Okay.
But the main stuff the game focuses on is it's mostly walking simulator with
Yeah.
puzzle solving, which is pattern recognition, which is like basically
Yeah.
you have to find symbols in the world, and then there's
Which we'll talk
combat
about as well. Yeah.
But
combat,
that's something
yeah.
I didn't understand about Psychosis either. Is pattern recognition is a big, like seeing patterns that aren't there. That's something I learned a lot about with this through Psychosis.
So I think it's really fun that we went into this game with different perspectives, because obviously I know about various psychotic disorders, and I've read about how it manifests in different patients and things.
Yeah.
So I knew this stuff, right? So I went in with a different perspective. I went in with it knowing it was a game about psychosis, and I went in going, well, I know the symptoms of psychotic disorders. I know, okay, hallucinations, delusions, I'm looking for those. I knew the pattern recognition. There's even speech issues, but she doesn't have those. There's just a lot of things. And I'm just going in like a professional, looking for the symptoms, if you will. So it's fun that we went in with those different.
It's like a very broad term, psychosis.
Yeah. So for listeners, the definition of psychosis, psychosis is when someone is experiencing a break from reality, is how they term it. But this can be the two main symptoms. They're called positive symptoms, are hallucinations and delusions. So hallucinations, they could be visual, auditory, the sensory experiences, which they've tried to emulate in the game, and they're in reality when your perception of reality does not map onto what reality is, right? So, and in a sensory perspective. And then delusions is all about what you think is real mapped on against what is real. Okay, so again, it's when your perceptions of reality do not match up with what is. That's just what psychosis is. And then obviously it branches out and symptoms differ between patients and blah, blah, blah.
Well, I think it's really interesting coming from like this old England, like Viking angle, because we had such a bad understanding of psychosis back then that we're looking at it from the angle of people who go, "Oh, you're a soothsayer. You're somebody who sees the spirits." And to somebody with a altered view of the earth, they may look at it and get these visions and go, "Okay, these are visions from the gods. These are," and it's deeply tied into like the mythos of what they understand. And as Senua plays through the game, she ties this to the mythos of the Northmen. So you have people like Helya and all these different like Viking mythologies that I was learning more about as I played. I thought that stuff was really interesting.
I think that is absolutely fascinating how they've taken, because I think the idea was based on the documentaries that we've watched and stuff. The idea was we want to do a game about this. Okay, well, what should we set the setting to? And then they decided on this particular time period, and then tied in the mythology with it. And I think that is absolutely excellent, because we're doing it through our perspective of the medical model of mental health, where we're looking at it as a condition to be treated, whereas no other characters in the game, including Senua herself, are looking at it that way. They're looking at it like she has this ability, or she just sees things differently.
Well, we can get into it deeper when we get into spoilers, because there's lots to get into with how Senua sees her own visions, quote unquote, or her own darkness, as she calls it, I believe, in the game. But let's go through, from what I heard about Ninja Theory and the original Hellblade was the story and the graphics and everything going on was really great, but then the actual gameplay itself was very weak. And I think that was my main experience of at least Hellblade 1, was that I loved all of the stuff where it's just like weird puzzle solving, when it wasn't, just find a pattern in this place. This place will go red. Look at this pattern. Like, do you remember the section where there was like the masks and you would have to look through the masks? Yeah. There was like those tower things inside the tree, and there was a set of a bunch of different interesting puzzles and stuff. Like, I loved that stuff. Or like when you go into the cave and you just start looping around in circles and circles, and it was like terrifying. It was like, what the hell is going on, sort
Yeah.
of thing. Like I like that stuff, but I think like the weakest part of the original Hellblade has got to be one, how much of the game is just go to this area, find a pattern in the area from like a random tree or a building, and then it's like, okay, now you're in the combat area, and you because like I could literally walk up to an area and I'd look at it and I'd go, oh, okay, this is the combat area now. Like I from like because you're looking at this from somebody who's massively in psychology. I've played like 1 billion games, so I walk up to an area and I go, okay, this is the combat area. Okay,
and I don't often play puzzle games either.
Games.
Yeah, so I don't think the puzzles bothered me as much as they did you, because I'm not, I'm not big on that stuff.
Anyone knows that me and Tony are usually awful at puzzle games, but we do like to play them.
But you play enough of them. I stay away from them. They're not something I often find interesting. But I think they were kind of a means to an end in the game. So I'm trying not to spoil, or I'm trying to speak as open
whenever
as
you
possible.
want to go into spoilers, we can. Like
I don't want to go. Yeah, I think we've got plenty to talk about before we do. But yeah. So to link back with what we said before, so it's a game about this person set in this setting where they're experiencing psychosis. And as you said about patterns earlier, that links in with the puzzles, right? The puzzles are this person going through this experience, and they are finding patterns in things that people don't often do. So they're finding runic patterns and things. And one of your jobs as the player and the character in Senua is to you've been tasked with finding the symbols, and you go off and you try and match them up. And as you can probably see on screen right now, if they're watching the gameplay with us, it's just often brightly colored, as you said. Which, if you're a person that plays a lot of puzzle games like you, that's the
well, I talked about because there's a current discourse online right now about yellow paint, and I don't know if you've heard about this, but people are complaining a lot. Like, the new Resident Evil game, there was yellow paint everywhere where you're supposed to go, and it's very blatant to people who can see it, but it's obviously there for accessibility because most people who play games, especially if you're someone who's new to games, you'll get lost very quickly. It's like if you give a controller or a game to somebody who's never played a game before, and you're like, okay, you just saw the Last of Us TV show, I want to play The Last of Us. You want to onboard those people as quickly as possible, and you're like, fuck, I'm going to paint everything to make sure they don't get lost. Like, I think one of the biggest criticisms was God of War Ragnarok, where you have like that head attached to you, and it's constantly like, oh, looks like you're struggling to solve the puzzle. Here's the solution to the puzzle that you're trying to solve every 2 seconds. Like, but I would say like the second game had much more like yellow paint and white paint even a lot of the time. Like I could feel like they definitely took that on board of like people maybe getting lost and tried to make sure that nobody was going to get lost. I think psychosis in media is really interesting because I think the only representation of psychosis in media I can remember seeing is, I don't know, have you ever heard of the film The Beautiful Mind with Russell Crowe? I really like that film. So if anyone hasn't seen it, it's about a guy who basically...
Is that what it is?
Yes, he's very smart, but he also starts to see patterns of like a secret society that's not there. And I think it's a really good film. It was from like 2001, but he's basically... It's like a mathematician.
I knew that about the film.
He basically... starts to see stuff that's not there, sort of thing. But it's like this mix between like a genius, but somebody who's suffering from psychosis is what I would describe it as now, knowing what I know.
Well, if you're ever struggling, psychosis is the broadest term to use, whereas when people use the word schizophrenia, it's like, they've avoided.
Well, I think the popular term online is to be like, oh, this is fucking schizo. Like, schizo has become like an online
they've used
word.
It as
or like,
it.
Let's say like words that have lost meaning on the internet, like autism. This is fucking autistic. Like, people have started just like
internet's not good.
Like, have you heard the like TikTok gave me mental illnesses? Like, I have ADHD now. I have autism. Like,
well, some of that is psychology. Some of it is their fault, right? The people that came up with these diagnoses, even like going back 100 years, it is their fault because they've taken words and meanings of words and then strapped them onto things like roots of words, you know, like the skits, right? There's a personality disorder called schizoid personality disorder, and it's a personality disorder. It's got nothing to do with psychosis. But if you look at schizoid, you'd think a certain way about someone, won't you? You'd think it would be that kind of. You'd think it'd be more schizophrenia related. And words like anxiety. Anxiety is used as an emotion and a medical condition. You know, and even depression. You know, we use that colloquially as well. Yeah.
Some of the puzzle sections are like this section where you have to look through the doors to enter different worlds because Senua has this idea of a trickster god who's like setting up different realities. I like this sort of stuff, but I think for the most part I didn't. And then like the combat is a really weak part of Hellblade. Like it's essentially like, okay, you have a light attack or a heavy attack. I don't know if let me check if I have some combat in this footage.
You have a kick and you have a block / parry.
Yes, and it's like got the perfect parry like system, right?
Yes.
I'm not going to say Sekiro because there's nowhere near.
This game is Sekiro.
But I think like they even went like because it's more cinematic combat, I would say, and in the second game they go even more cinematic.
Yeah, we'll talk about that when we get there. But yeah, the second game is insane when it comes to it. This is the games give me like modern God of War vibes in terms of you said it's a walking simulator, and that's the you know the FOV and the angles and how they try and make it a seamless all-in-one.
Oh, I had a lot of problem with the FOV. Like, I would say I was borderline feeling sick playing this game sometimes because it has like aggressive motion blur, aggressive FOV, like chromic aberration. Like, there's a lot of settings you can't turn off.
Oh, that was another. Yeah, if you want, I'm sure our listeners would really want to play the game, but just be aware, the settings are very limited if that's something that.
So that because it's an Unreal Engine 4 game, you can like because I'm somebody who's like, okay, immediately as I start playing a game, I go to the PC Gaming Wiki and I'm like, okay, it's an Unreal Engine 4. I can go into the .ini file, the ini file. I can turn off motion blur that way, or like there was a mod somebody made to increase the FOV. Because, like, literally, there's certain games like Resident Evil 6, which is a game nobody should want to play. The FOV is so aggressive in that game that I was like, I literally couldn't play more than a level at a time because it was so close. So, like, like somebody like me who suffers from motion sickness, like I get sick on boats and stuff like that. I do need that, and it's thankfully there's a motion blur option in the second game. They let you turn that stuff off.
Yeah, the second game had a lot more settings.
But yeah, essentially the combat comes down to parry attacks, red attacks jump, light attack when you can, heavy attack when you get a chance, and then this game has a kick, which is for shields basically. You kick off shields, they stumble, and then you go in and attack them. And then eventually the combat sort of evolves when you get the mirror, which then lets you go into basically like a time slow fury mode where you can just basically get in a bunch of attacks. And you charge that up by getting successful parries.
Which is that thing on Senua's hip there on the right, so that the brightly coloured thing, you can see that as a player. Yeah, it's got those components. I think combat is, what did it say? Automatic? Is that the setting? So it kind of changes? That's
the difficulty of combat changes.
I found that really good.
I don't know.
So if you're a more
seasoned
player,
I got to be honest with you, Jesse. Okay, I'm gonna say now, like, I'll give you my general thoughts on Hellblade 1 before we go into spoilers, because like, I borderline dislike this game at certain points. Yeah. Like, I got really frustrated by this. Like, at points, I almost quit playing Hellblade at certain points because I was like,
I really like the game,
sucks.
And I suggest the viewers do play it because it's an experience. Especially, even if for the faults of the first game, the second game is an insane thing to play. So, you know,
the second game, I'm glad I kept playing through to play the second, because I think the second game was so much better with the story of the first game.
But we can go on and talk about faults if you want. I just wanted to preface it with, you know, it's actually a good game, but
I'm in two minds where I'm like, the second game was so good that you kind of need to play the first game for the story, but I'm kind of like, you could potentially just watch the cutscene at the second game, and
You
I think you
could,
might
you
have a
could.
much better time.
Yeah,
Because
I don't know how much it would give you, but well, even mechanically, like you learn a lot of the mechanics in the first game that are carried over to the second as well.
yeah, but
So
the game
I
is
went
so
in with the
mechanically
second.
light that I don't think it generally matters.
Oh, that's
overall.
true. That is true. But yeah, so to finish off combat, yeah, it has that it had that automatic changing of difficulty, whereby if you're a more seasoned player, you can still find challenge in the game because they will either give you more enemies or they'll give you more difficult enemies. I distinctly remember a part in the game where I came across enemies I'd never seen before.
Yeah.
And then I had to learn a new way to deal with them, even with the limited mechanics, the light attack, you know, heavy attack.
And
shield, yeah.
speaking of because we're going to talk about both games. The enemies in this game are very like mythos, like mythical creatures. In the second game, they're very like grounded, and the second game is much more grounded than the first Hellblade game. I would say generally overall, which I liked. I liked having like a more like frame of reference, but I guess that's like the difference in Psychosis from the first game and the second game is very different because Hellblade 1 is very much sensuous psychosis and not really understanding what's happening, and the discovery of that is important to the story. And I would say the general gameplay of Senua and what you're doing is you're kind of going around and defeating these gods of the Viking mythology to try and progress to get to an end goal sort of thing.
Yeah. So we can finish off talking about the game before we go on to spoilers. So to summarize, you know, so far, great game. It is walking simulator type with puzzles and combat. The puzzles, well, even and the combat relate directly to Senua's psychosis. One thing we haven't said, which is the first thing that happens in the game, is throughout the game you have the auditory hallucinations.
So I believe in the
headset.
story they're called the Furies. Like they have a name. Like they're called the two women who, because they used a binaural audio, which if you don't know, basically,
let's talk about that.
You have like one of those ASMR mics that you see women licking on Twitch. But basically what they do is they have two ears that simulate a real human head. So you have positional audio. And they basically walk around this and they'll speak and whisper in your ear, and it feels like there's actually people walking around you and speaking these noises. Because they highly suggest when you play this game, you play it with a pair of headphones. So you can hear.
So you have this auditory experience as well. Like, so in terms of, you've got your issues with the gameplay itself and the mechanics. Yeah. But
the Fury stuff is great.
Good game. The auditory,
I love how like
well.
I'm playing through the game and I'm never sure whose side the Furies are on.
Yeah.
Sometimes they're like, oh, you should go over here, but then they're kind of like also kind of like
you won't do it.
Yeah, like self-esteem or like depression. It's like, oh, you won't do this, you can't do this. Yeah. Like sort of thing, or
which is so for the player, like I mean, I'm sure we can all recognize we have multiple voices in our head, right? You have a doubt, right, and you have motivational thought processes and things like that. And then as a player who doesn't know what these experiences are like, they can go into it and they can realize the intensity and the because you can't turn them off. That's another thing about even depression and psychosis and anything that's cognitive like that. You can't control those thoughts, right? And that's a defining characteristic.
I'm running out of footage.
So
we'll go back.
As a player, you can experience not being able to control, shut off, stop those thought processes, which again adds to the immersion of the character and what she's experiencing. Which is again, they've thought about so much when it comes to this. They've done a really good job. Like even those statues on the side.
I think we have different opinions on how. I will say
do.
Like because like for me, I'm such a gameplay guy. Like I love if you gave me the choice between, you said here's a game with amazing mechanics but an awful like story and atmosphere and everything, or you said here's a game with an amazing story and atmosphere but the gameplay is really not great. I would always take the mechanically better game every single time.
Yeah, I think we're completely different in that case because
like Jesse, 2022, my favorite game of the year was Neon White. I was like, mechanically, this is one of the best games I've ever played, but I hate the story and the atmosphere and everything.
And you hate anime.
Well, I've been playing Japanese games this year. I'm
You
flipping
play a lot, yeah. Yeah, we're absolutely opposite. It's like Witcher 3. I was saying The Witcher 3, I think, is
I
one of the
love
best
the
games ever
story
made
and the characters
in
of
the
The
world.
Witcher 3, but
Yeah.
mechanically, moving around in combat feels awful.
Yeah. And until you said that, and our friends later agreed with you, until any of that happened, it wasn't even a thought to me. I've played hundreds of hours of it, and it wasn't a thought to me about the mechanics. I just I jumped into the game. What did it mechanically feel like? Okay, and then I tried to understand it from what was in front of me. I didn't think, oh, well, this could be better, or it's not the right, or it should be like this. I didn't have that mindset about me. So we're different in that, and it's the same in this game. We're different opinions.
Yeah. Yeah, I would say like I can appreciate games that are more sort of like one of my favorite games of all time is The Outer Wilds, and that game is entirely a walking simulator. So like I have like when games have stories and atmosphere and ideas that just elevate them above everything, I can look past like the low mechanics or like even games with bad mechanics, for example. But for me, like I would like because I like to give games ratings because I have like a game journal on Backlogged where I basically just give like a quick star review. And to show you my like difference in opinion between this game and the second game, just to show you like how much I really preferred the second game, I gave this game a 3 out of 5, and I gave the second game a 4.5 out of 5. That's how different I thought about the games.
Yeah.
I think because, man, I think we've got to get into like.
Well,
I think we have to get into spoilers at this point.
Yeah, the only other thing before we go into spoilers is this is a short game. Both games are very short. They're like 5 hours, is that right? 5, 6 hours?
So, for both of the games, I've got about 6 hours of gameplay to complete them. So
yeah, there you go.
They're not very long.
Very short games. So, yeah, I am someone in going to what you said about preference in game style. I don't play as many games as you, and I give up on games quite easily if they don't keep me hooked and stuff. That wasn't an issue for me on these games because they're so short.
Yeah,
you know. So that's another positive.
I think I appreciate that you value your time and you go, I don't like this game, I'm going to stop playing it. Because in the past, sometimes I've completed games that I hate, and my goal recently has been to try and give up on games I don't like. Yeah. Because I think it's hard.
Yeah. Because you want to give them their dues. You want to best. Because even some games that are, I don't know if you come across any. I can't name any, but some games where people go, "Oh, these games are mastermind games. These are amazing games. Like, they've got a big following. People like them." You start playing it and you think, "This isn't that good."
And then you think
Sonic
maybe Frontiers.
It'll get better.
Okay, I start playing Sonic, and people are like, "This is the best Sonic game in years. Like, this game is great." And I'm like, "Okay, people love this game. I'm gonna go in it, and I'm gonna love it." And then I go in and I go, "I hate this game."
And then you keep playing.
Am I wrong? Am I the problem here? So I keep playing and I keep playing.
Yeah. You think maybe it gets better. Maybe there's something about it later on, and then you keep sinking hours into it, and you're thinking it's the same. Nothing's changed.
That's how I started feeling for Hellblade 1. Was like people love this game, and I went and I played it, and I went, "Oh, I'm really not enjoying parts of this game."
There was a part. We'll get into spoilers in a second, but there was a part where I thought about maybe giving up, and then I thought, well, it's only a short game. It's only got like an hour left of it, like 2 hours or however long. I just knew it was a short game, so I persevered because I knew I didn't have much left I had to put into the game. But we can go into spoilers now if you want.
Yeah, let me just do a quick timestamp. 29 minutes in. Okay, we're in spoilers now. So, Hellblade 1 is a game about Senua's love being sacrificed by Vikings in
the Northmen,
the Northmen in a tribute to the gods, basically. And again, speaking about the documentary, they were talking about how a traumatic event such as seeing a loved one pass can actually trigger psychosis in people.
Yeah, that's a good point.
So it's a combination of, because you go into the backstory of Senua, she has like her father was a shaman druid character who basically sacrificed her mother to the gods in order.
This was another.
Oh, go on.
Yeah, I was going to say, well, this is another point talking about family. I mean, the runes you've just seen on screen there, they are indicators of kind of how far away through the game you get, but they also give you a lot of backstory behind characters and things in the game, and mythology. So
Well, I
it
would say there
is worth.
in Hellblade 1 there's only really 3 or 4 characters. There's
Yeah, there's a lot
Senua,
less.
your mother, your father, and
Yeah,
then
your
the
lover.
Scottish
Yeah.
dude.
Oh, and
He's kind of a
the
character,
Scottish
but yeah,
narrator.
the Scottish narrator. The love's
um,
kind of a character.
So yeah, what you're saying about Psychosis, yeah. So the family, yeah, as we said, and there was a reason why they made the family the way they are, even though they're not in the game. Okay, the mother and father are not in the game; they're only in memory and things like
Yeah.
that. Maybe even some delusions or hallucinations. Sorry. Um, and there was a point for that because there is a
Hereditary
genetic
traits,
component.
yeah.
Yeah, psychosis is something that's polygenetic. So that was very important for them to have that family, and then also the family dynamic matters when it comes to developing disorders as well. So they made the father just a piece of shit, right? Wasn't he?
Yeah, so he basically sacrificed the mother to, good crop harvest this year. Let's get the mother sacrificed to the gods. And then he basically kept Senua locked up in a cage all the time. He's like, you have the darkness as
Yeah,
well.
yeah,
And then
yeah. They kept referring to that.
a bunch of people were dying to the plague, and then they was like, oh, this is Senua's fault. This is your darkness. So Senua gets sent into the wilds to live by herself. Then the
Yeah,
Northmen come to attack the village to attack her love Dillion, and then that's when he
his
gets
name.
sacrificed. And then that's what really triggers her down this deep path of psychosis
Yeah.
of like, what the hell's going
Because
on? This is my darkness. What have you done? Like these constant
yeah.
questions of, is this my fault? Like and stuff like that. And
So the mother plays it. So the father was the character that was, environmentally bad for
yeah,
the development of her mental health, and then the mother was was symbolic of the genetic factors that developed mental health. Because her mother was also mentally ill, right?
yes.
And she did she take her own life?
No, she was sacrificed by her dad. I'm
She was
fairly sure.
sacrificed. Oh right,
Yeah,
okay.
because
I
I
thought
don't
I
know if you
remember there was
remember.
something being
There's
at the end.
no. There's constant scenes of Senua looking at her mother being burnt at the stake. I don't know if you remember that sort of stuff. Like her
Oh
father
no,
sacrificed. He's like,
it's been a while.
and the whole time the Furies are like, look away, Senua, don't look at this. Like,
I remember those, yeah. But I distinctly remember something in the end when the god at the end was saying about that she took the easy way out. She didn't hold on to the suffering, which is what she should have done, according to this god, and that she betrayed the gods by dying or not going through the suffering. I remember that
I
being
think she
a
gave up on
motif.
the darkness by being killed. I don't know. I'm fairly sure she was
Yeah.
murdered by her dad. Like,
Anyway,
because
she's
when
dead.
we're playing the game,
Another traumatic incident.
I don't know if
Yeah.
like because through trauma you have stuff like amnesia and memory loss. So through the game you're like,
Oh yeah.
what happened to Senua's mother? Because Senua doesn't know because she's going through
Yeah,
this traumatic event.
Yeah.
So maybe she believed that she. But I'm fairly sure, from my understanding
Yeah.
and the documentaries and stuff, like I think her mother was sacrificed by her
Okay.
father. And
Okay.
you know, it's interesting because Senua was sent away and she was blamed for this plague that attacked the village. But that's
Yeah.
a real thing that happens in like literally in the Middle Ages, people would sacrifice Jewish people because they believed they caused plagues and stuff like that. It's insane. It's like
And just think about witch trials.
on the
and things
one
like that,
hand,
like,
you
throughout
look at it
history,
like
it's-
these gods and these creatures that do brutally hellish things are like insane, but it's like you look at real human behavior and you're like, that is like sometimes even worse than some of the shit these people are doing. It's crazy, you know.
I mean, yeah, gods are all symbolic of the human issues, especially the gods back then when they were
Hammers?
polytheist.
Polytheist.
Polytheist, where they believed
I
in
know
many gods, right?
polyamorous.
So
I don't know polytheist.
I was struggling on the word there. Yeah, polytheistic cultures where they believed in many gods. The gods are often representative of something in the tangible real world. And if we're talking about suffering and war and loss and chaos, and then the gods are just representative of human behavior there, which again plays nicely into the delusions and hallucinations.
But basically the story is Senua's going to Helya to go because she's carrying the dead head of Dillion everywhere with her. Because
She is, yeah, I forgot about that.
It reminds me of Lollipop Chainsaw, where you have like your boyfriend's head.
No.
Like, okay, it's a weird Japanese game.
Is it a game? Okay,
yeah, it's a game. But basically, she carries it because she believes if she reunites his soul, which is in Helheim, which is like the Viking hell, basically, and then with his,
I believe the soul is kept within the head. Yeah,
she can basically save his soul from being tortured in hell, sort of thing. And ultimately, like, it comes down to the fact that this is just Senua's going through the stages of grief because she needs to believe that Dillion can be saved, even though he's already dead.
Yeah,
because if she gives up on the idea that Helya exists and Dillion's soul exists in this like framework of her mind, she would have to give up on the fact that Dillion's just gone and there is no saving Dillion.
Accept. Yeah, and acceptance doesn't come early, does it?
No.
Yeah, so that's the story, and then she goes through all these trials and finds all these things, and to try and get to that, which is the ending. And she fights these gods because they and these hallucinations because she thinks that's the world is testing her and tricking her all the time. Yeah, so that plays into the trials and the combat.
Yeah. Trying to think.
It's a bit in terms of the story, it's in pieces. And it's fed to you throughout the game, and I don't think I found it confusing at points, and I think you also did not like that. You thought that it was a lot of information.
Okay with games that have like open stories and open interpretations. Like so much horror stuff is like fucking. If you like this, like play Silent Hill. I think you would love that. That is essentially just like people write YouTube essays just about that game and everything it represents, and it's all open-ended and it's up to interpretation and stuff like that. But yeah, I'm used to this sort of stuff from playing a lot of like survival horror games and stuff like that. Like that's par for the course. I just think that a lot of just like the way it was told through runes on the wall and like putting it through the frame of like I forget like half the things they're talking about. They talk like about a woman who pretends to be she turns into another woman so she can sleep with her brother to birth a warrior that's strong enough to defeat him and go to fucking Nippelheim, and I'm like I don't remember half these words. Like it was confusing. Like from my
there's a lot of words of places and gods,
And if you miss one of these runes, you miss like half of these mini B stories about the gods.
Yeah,
it's very
because
confusing.
sometimes you'd find a rune. If you'd missed one, you'd find another rune, and it would start in the middle of the story, right? It would be like, well, then this character went over here after that. You know, and you're like, after what? You know, I've missed the part where it says.
I think
happened.
the thing that really I wasn't a bit. You have to basically stand and focus on these, and then these just dump story on you, and you have to stand there and wait for them to finish. Like. In other games,
could be in the area. If you go too far, it stops.
But the problem is, as soon as you walk away, it'll keep going. But as soon as it triggers like a area narrative, it'll be like the Furies will take over and go, "Oh, Senua, this is happening now," and immediately it'll cut out the story.
So all the voices,
I think what would be like a system I love in games is BioShock. You have like the audio diaries. That was brilliant because it allows you to pick up and listen to like a untold narrative while you're moving around the world and doing things. Like it doesn't force you to sit and read like a text, like a book, or it doesn't force you to sit and read like a terminal, like in a Fallout game or something.
I don't know how they're trying to implement it here. Don't know what item would be useful for that, but that's not for us to figure out.
I mean, I like stories that are told through the game itself. Like when you can figure out stuff without having to sit down and just like read something to really understand.
Well, yeah, so there's two layers to it. The main story is told through the cinematic and cutscenes. So then there is the underlying story, like to get more out of it and more understanding.
Well, some of my favorite games of all time are immersive sims. And the beauty of like one of the best immersive sim makers in the world, rest in peace Arcane Austin. But they made this game called Prey 2017. And the beautiful thing about it is it has this thing called environmental storytelling, where I have no idea. Like, there's nobody who's going to go, okay, stop, cutscene, this is what happened. All right, stop, here's a textbook, this is what happened. It's like, I can walk into a room where I can go into this spaceship, right? And I can look around the room and I can go, oh, this is what must have happened based on what's around me. And I think that sort of stuff is brilliant. I think that's the best way to do storytelling.
They use the environment in these games as representatives of the internal story and struggle, which is different to the the past and the history and the rest of the things. So,
but yeah,
we've got to kind of juggle both of them.
I think the stuff that really started to piss me off was later in the game when you're in like Helheim. Like, do you remember that?
Let's talk about that.
You remember like the dog fight where you had to stand in the light and then he would come and attack you and you'd have to dodge out the way. And I was never every boss fight
the big boss. Yeah.
Every boss fight also has, I get it, it has no health bar, but I just have no idea if I'm doing the right thing or if I'm even like like damaging the enemy.
Yeah, because you have light and strong attacks and you're not sure which ones are more beneficial, if they're actually scratching it or not.
I like stuff with like a more minimalistic HUD. Like I love that in this game and the next game. When you charge up the mirror, it shows runes on the mirror growing. It doesn't give you like a HUD. It's like actually in the game sort of thing. Like we've seen other games do this, like Metro Exodus, where when you look at the map, your character physically pulls a map out of his backpack, and everything is like in the game, like immersive sort of thing. But like towards the end, like when you get chased through the like a large theme of this game is the light is where you are safe. And you'd have to constantly run from areas to get to torches and light up braziers and stuff like that to make sure you're safe. Yeah. There was a lot of times there where I kept getting caught in the dark, and I was like, am I supposed to be able to make this? Oh, no, wait. I was supposed to stop here, light up this area, and then keep going? Or
can I talk about two puzzles in specific that I thought were not... I didn't enjoy, right? I thought, and they did get rid of that kind of thing in the second game. So the lightness and the darkness metaphor is symbolic of the mental health, right? And it's, staying away from the darkness and trying not to fall into it, because otherwise you'll be consumed. Stay in the light. And there was two there's two main puzzles. One of them, so we'll start off with the one where you can't see anything. And there are these monsters that are
the one where you're literally
around.
Blind.
You're literally blind, so you only have, which is good for because then you've only got the auditory experience, right? And symbolically, like it's a great thing, but in terms of actuality, you would eventually flicker. I can't remember the mechanic, but you could see the beasts. You could see the things that were there.
Yeah.
And I just thought it was so frustrating and annoying. I don't think I ended up dying or losing by it, because I think they had a very narrow area effect where they would detect you, right? I think you can actually get quite close to them before they detected. But you didn't know that going into it, and you're just walking around in the dark for no reason. Nothing really is being explained to you through auditory. It's the continuation of the hallucinations you're having anyway.
Yeah.
So it's a good experience, but I think as it's been implemented as a kind of a puzzle to just walk around these random things, and you don't know again how long it's going to go for, I just thought it was just annoying. I just wanted it to be over. How did you feel about that puzzle?
I didn't mind it at all.
If you want to call it a puzzle. Well, the one that frustrated me, because I didn't die in the game much, but this one I died a bunch. Yeah, but this one, it's hard to die on it, isn't it? But because they want you to keep going.
Yeah.
The one that pissed me off the most was the barn burning down puzzle, where there was a fire that was like chasing you, and you had to come out of this maze. Yeah, the maze. Yeah.
Yeah, so before I'd played that one, you sent me a message on Discord, and you basically said, I died so many times on this. Yeah. Like, this is super frustrating. I completed that first time, I didn't find it hard at all.
Well, it's because what happened is that, again, it's symbolic, but that fire that's chasing you around, that's supposed to be a beast or a demon or whatever it is that you don't see, but if it gets too close, it consumes you and you die.
There was probably
And
other
it was
stuff I
just-
found really hard that you were just like, oh, I didn't have. Like
If
you
you-
said
if
you
you-
didn't.
if
I
you-
died like 5 or 6 times to that dog. Like I was dying
Oh,
constantly.
I did not. I did not.
Yeah.
I died once actually to that dog. I remember distinctly because I got towards the end of the boss
I don't think it
fight
was a
and
dog.
then
I think it was a
died.
boar, which it was like this demonic boar. But I loved that it was
Boar?
like,
Do you mean
yeah,
like the Cerberus thing? Like, not Cerberus, but it's 4 legs, very skinny, but it was huge. It was gigantic.
his name's Garm, and he's a giant boar. I can send
How'd
you the.
you spell
I'll
it?
send it on Discord.
Oh.
Because I don't know if you were. Because my immediate memory was he was a dog, but the more I looked at it, which I think is
Yeah,
brilliant,
yeah, it
by
looks
the
like
way.
a dog, yeah.
No,
Oh, he's got
but
the tusks. All right,
the thing I love was I immediately started to look at him and went, "This is a boar," and then my brain went, "Wait, maybe outside the psychosis, Senya was just fighting a boar in the wilds, and
Yeah,
this is her
that's fun.
psychosis representation of that boar." Which I
Because
was
it
like,
does have mechanics like that, doesn't it, with the charge?
"Yeah,
Right, you know? It is... Yeah, we're talking about the same thing, just so everyone's
Yeah.
clear. Yeah, I died once on it towards the end of it, and then I was like, oh, right, okay, I got it. I know what it's after. But you died because of the charge, is that right, that mechanic?
no, I didn't die with the charge. I just kept going outside like the light area, and then I wasn't."
Oh.
I was getting killed out there. I got really. I think I got to a point where I just like, because you say you had that combat that goes up and down. I got to a point where I was like, I'm over with this. I'm gonna put on the easiest one, and then I fucking fought him again. Like I was just like,
Yeah. Which is a good thing that you can do, you know. That
Yeah.
You can change that, but... No, I didn't really have trouble with him. I actually quite like the character because he was a voice in your head at some point, right? Or like you heard him talk to you. I think at various, or maybe the voices sound similar, but
let's have a look. So it says
no,
here on-
yeah, because he had a layer, didn't he? And you was trying to find him in the layer, and you could hear
Yeah.
him the whole time talking to you about.
But there
the
was like
darkness.
he had a form where he was like literally invincible at certain points, and I was like
Okay.
struggling to know when to attack him. Like there's not a lot of like feedback to be like, okay, now attack him. This is what you're supposed to do. Like it's not like a fucking. It's not like you're playing a Nintendo game where you go, okay, I have to stomp on this guy's head 3 times. It's the rule of 3. Everyone's played a Nintendo game at one point, and they know, okay,
Yeah.
I have to beat this boss 3 times, and then it's done. It's like the game's designed in a way that if you've played a game before, you're probably not sure what you're supposed to be doing, and you can figure it out. But the problem with Hellblade is it's very like feedback light. To a point where I'm never sure if I'm actually doing anything to the boss, or if I'm...
Yeah.
It's so easy to get misled down paths where I'm like, oh, I think this is what I'm supposed to do, and you can just spend like half an hour doing the wrong thing without the game
Yeah.
ever being like, oh, okay, no, this is not what you're supposed to be doing.
It's like with that light that chases you through that maze. If you go too quickly, I figured this out from dying so many times to it. If you straight away, because like on your first attempt you don't know where you're going, so there's a bit of a buffer. But on your second attempt, and you're like, you look around and you go, oh, I'm supposed to go down here, right? On your second attempt, you're like, I know I need to go here, so I'll go here quicker. Quicker was actually worse because it just, I think how it works is it just tracks you, right? And it just follows you. Whereas if you waited that buffer, it comes towards you first a little bit, and then like the direction you go is further away from it. Whereas, because you've got to go round, right? But if you run straight away, you go round this thing, and then you're going in its direction again, like you're doing like a U-turn. Then it can easily get you. It can just cut across through the walls, and it can get you in the U-turn. So that was what was frustrating me, is I was going too early. It was catching me really early because it was going through all these, and I was losing sense of direction because I was in this maze, so I didn't know kind of how close or far away it was. But you know, yeah, it's just a struggle on that for me.
Well, interesting thing it has on the Wikipedia page for Garn from Hellblade, because we thought I made it was like it was a dog, wasn't it? Apparently, despite being referred to as a giant wolf in the original lore, which Garm is based on, or like a
I thought it was Fenrir, to be honest. If you know the mythology of Fenrir.
No, I don't.
Okay.
It appears in Hellblade as a large boar-like creature. It is speculated the reason for this is that Senya was only told the story of Garm by Druth, where he referred to it only as a beast. This causes her to imprint one of the most common beasts she knew from her home, which is a boar. Because there's no wolves in the UK, so she's not going to know about, wolves. Where in Scandinavia, like Iceland area, there's wolves everywhere, right?
Yeah. Which is what Fenrir was, so I just assumed it was that, because I think there was a story about Fenrir maybe in one of the runes, and then I just assumed that it was another name for Garm, was just another name for Fenrir, being a clever, because Fenrir was a clever beast, right? It was very smart, and you spend your first part before you're even fighting Garm. You're trying to figure out these puzzles, and you're trying to get through the layer and turn all the lights on and light the braziers and to try and get to it, and then it's trying to tell you, no, you're doing it wrong, you're an idiot, like you're going to get caught by the light, and it's seemingly smarter than you, right? So I just assumed it was the mythology of Fenrir was another thing, but obviously I'm wrong there. That's not the case.
Well, this is speculation from players, but it could be.
Well, it doesn't look like Fenrir. I'm looking at pictures of artistic impressions of that, and it just Fenrir is a wolf, whereas this clearly isn't. I mean, I know it's got this dead look to it, right, where it looks more like a carcass, but still, you can tell with the horns and the tusks.
You could tell me anything and say, yeah, this is from Norse mythology. I'm like, yeah, okay, fair enough. Like, I don't know anything about Norse mythology other than
one problem. I'm really fascinated in mythology. I like games like this, and
I know about like Valheim, like the Viking eternal, beer drinking fighting area, but that's about it. I think I'm much more knowledgeable about. If there's one mythology I know about, it's probably more like Greek mythology is the one that's the most well known, I would say.
Yeah. So I've read books on Greek and Norse mythology. I find them very fascinating, but I too also like. I think I've listened to Neil Gaiman's Norse mythology book twice on audio, like, because I find it so fascinating. But I can't remember the names of things. I can't, and who was what. But just Googling now, so Garm was actually a real mythological creature. It was a wolf or dog associated with both Hel and Ragnarok. And Ragnarok is kind of a theme in these games as well.
If you're interested in
blood-stained guardian of hell,
I think it is interesting learning about other mythologies. But if you're, I'm gonna have to go back to Hellblade 1 again. I keep running out of fudge. We want to talk about Hellblade 1 for an hour.
Well, a majority of this is linked to 2. So
if you're interested in about other cultures, there was a game I played a few years back for Spotlight. I played the demo of it, and it's a game called Raji. That is all about like Indian mythology.
Hindu,
yeah, and that stuff's really interesting, like Vishnu and that sort of stuff. Yeah, so
I love Indian mythology.
If you're looking for more mythology, like check out Raji. That might be up your alley. It's called Raji, an Ancient Epic.
So there was other gods in the game as well. So Suta or Sut was in the game. I think they called it Sut or something like that in the game. That was one of the first ones that you fought. The fire, right? That's also a mythological. It's like a giant in mythology, and guardian of Muspelheim apparently. But
Muspelheim, where we all do lifting. Gonna Muspelheim today, boys.
Yeah, there it is. So there's a lot of mythology. So that makes sense that Garm is the guardian of Hell, right? That's the mythological basis for Garm there. So that makes sense because at the end of the game, that's your target. That's where you get to.
Well, because like in Greek mythology, you have like Cerberus, right? Cerberus, the three-headed dog, which is why I probably associated it with the dog, Cerberus.
Yeah. Well, here it says that sometimes it's displayed as a dog, so. But it's fun that they've interpreted that with her hallucinations as well, to make it something she's aware of. Because your brain does that. Your brain likes interpreting things, and what it does is it takes past events and past memories to help you interpret perceptions and things you see in the world.
Well, it's like really when you're about to go to bed and you got the lights turned off and you look at your...
Oh, yeah.
You've got like your dressing gown hanging up and your brain goes, there's a person over there looking at you.
Yeah. That's one of the common examples that I give to my students when I have to teach them.
That's like your like old caveman brain going, you're not safe. You have to be careful.
Yeah. It uses best case scenario, like your brain, if you want to summarize all of psychology, is your brain likes taking shortcuts. It will find the answers to problems really quickly. The problem with that is sometimes it's not the right answer. So yeah, like your example is a good explanation of that. Is your brain goes, there's a person, and then you squint a little bit. You take, the rest of your brain helps figure out the problem, and spends a little more time on it, and then they come to the correct answer, which is, oh no, it's just your bathrobe or something. And it's quite fun. So that happens here with Senua when she puts her interpretations and things she's seen.
Let's talk about technical stuff. Go into the ending of Hellblade, and then we'll move on to Hellblade 2.
Absolutely, good.
So,
good thing.
Technically, Unreal Engine 4 game. I don't know if you got this. I was getting like a bit of stuttering playing this game.
Yes.
Yes. Especially, I would call it like traversal, started like moving between different levels. There was like a distinct like drop in frames very quickly, and it was very noticeable.
So because I'm on a lower spec system than you, so I assumed it was just because of my specs. But in the second game, that is far more demanding, I didn't have that.
No, so there's a pre-shader compilation step in the second game.
Oh yeah, and that wasn't the one in the first one.
No. So basically, it's a well-known thing that a lot of Unreal Engine 4 games have shader compilation issues because they don't have this pre-shader compilation. So I'll just quickly go into shader compilation for anyone confused. Every time a new shader is shown on your screen, it has to be loaded. So every time there's like a new fire effect, there's a new like basically smoke effect or something you've never seen, it has to load that. And what historically games would do in the past is like, we'll just load it on the fly. What would happen, though, is loading that on the fly is the first time that's loaded into your memory, it would go, ugh! Suddenly your FPS drops because then it's suddenly loading in a bunch of stuff, and you have a very quick like dip in frame rate, and it makes the game feel very sluggish. And the more stuff that's being loaded in, the longer that dip is. And especially if you're going from like a high frame rate, it's much more noticeable. So like imagine you're going from like 120 FPS and then suddenly it's like, 20 FPS, and it's just like, what the hell is going on? That feels awful to play. What games do these days, especially like Unreal Engine 5, is it comes with a shader compilation step. So it'll basically go, I'm going to load all the shaders now based on the information of your PC, because the way shaders work is they need to be loaded based on your specific the specific hardware makeup of your PC. And this is a really hard thing to do on PC because PCs are so incredibly different from each other. One thing you can do is you almost never get shader compilation on consoles, because consoles are a set hardware platform. So if you play through the game once on an Xbox or a PlayStation, you've loaded all these shaders onto that specific piece of hardware because everybody who owns a PlayStation has the exact same hardware makeup. On a PC, there is so many different GPUs, CPUs, even drivers, like downloading a new driver, for example, will completely reset your shader compilation. So...
Was there any other technical issues that you had or anything? Otherwise,
the inability to natively turn off motion blur in the game. I actually modded in a more pulled back FOV than the initial game had because it was making me feel kind of sick. Like I think looking backwards and forwards between the second game and the first game, you have a much wider FOV, and that's also, I think, specifically to do with the fact that Hellblade 2 is presented in widescreen. Like you have the black bars on the top of your screen when you're not playing on a widescreen system. I don't know if you noticed that, because some people really hate widescreen, and I know like letterboxing or pillar boxing, based on how it's done. Pillar boxing would be more for like 4:3 content. I've never I know Tony famously hates like pillar boxing and letterboxing. I do think it is cooler to see more of your surroundings, like getting that bigger FOV with the widescreen letterboxing. And if you ever get confused what letterboxing and pillar boxing is, by the way, letters, think of it like a letterbox, so you're seeing like a wider image. Pillar box, think about two pillars on the side of your screen. Okay. But that stuff never bothered me anyway. But now I have an OLED. It bothers me even less because literally it's just like, the pixels on the top and bottom of my screen are turned off, and it just looks like bezels at that point. Like it doesn't bother me at all. But yeah, some people feel really sick with chromic aberration, and that's an effect that is used a lot in this game. I don't struggle with that personally, but that should be an option to turn that sort of stuff off if people, get motion sick from that. Because this game has ray tracing. Were you playing with the ray tracing mode on the first game?
I was on medium, I think.
Okay. Because that wasn't in. They remastered, like they did like a next gen version, I think, and added like this DirectX ray traced version later. So this wasn't actually at launch, but they went back and added it. But then the second game is made with this like Unreal Engine 5 Lumen Nanite stuff in mind, and looks really, really good.
Do you want to move on to?
No, we haven't talked about the end of Hellblade 1 yet.
Oh, okay.
Because we should talk about the end before we go into because the Hellblade 2 starts with the end.
I don't want this to go on forever. We can keep talking about it forever, can't we?
Yeah. So the game ends with you basically defeat all the bosses, and then you're like, I'm going to kill Helya and free Dillian's spirit, and you're going to fight Helya, and then suddenly the spirit goes to psychosis, hallucination of your father comes up and is like, because he's always shown throughout the first game as a guy in a hood, and then as you play through the game, you realize it's your father, who is this. Yeah. Your father is almost like the culmination of your psychosis in a lot of ways. Like, he is this shadowy figure who's like, you won't do this, Senua. Like, he doesn't believe in you.
Yeah,
he's trying to pull you down.
Negative thoughts, yeah.
And essentially, you get to a point where you keep fighting waves of enemies, and then suddenly you realize it's not a fight you can win because there is no way to save Dillian. You have to have acceptance that Dillian is gone and that you can't bring him back. And I think that is sort of like the crutch of the story of Senua's sacrifice, is she has to sacrifice... Because throughout the game, it's like, I'm sacrificing myself to save Dillian, but at the end of the game, you realize I'm actually sacrificing my belief that Dillian can be saved. Like, I have to accept that he's gone, and I have to accept that my psychosis is a part of me. And
there's a lot at the end that was talking about that and suffering and sacrifice, right? And how suffering is necessary and things like this, but it doesn't have to be the case. And
But I think, like, the ending felt kind of not the greatest in terms of like a snappy ending that goes, oh, okay, you kill Helya, Dillian saved Poggers, let's go. But I think when you look deeper into it and you see like the deeper meaning of the story, I think I have more appreciation for the first Hellblade after playing the second Hellblade.
I think I didn't pay attention to. So you finished the final boss. So then there's this monologue, and Senua's offering herself. She's like, look, I'm just done, right? She says, you can kill me right here, just get it over with, or you can keep me alive and I'll do whatever, but I'm just done, right?
Yeah.
And I stopped paying attention, really. Right. It's really bad to say, but because it was visually it was a good ending, with all of that, and even metaphorically a good ending. But yeah, there was just a lot of monologue at the end. I don't really know. Maybe you can help me out with that. Because then she just gets up and walks away.
Well, because they say like this is not the last story that Senua will go on, and basically, so the end of her story was she has this rage towards the Northmen, and she sees the Northmen through their gods, because this psychosis vision she gets, like quest she gets sent on. Her quest is to save Dillian, and going around and killing Northmen is not going to bring Dillian back to life from her understanding. The only way to do that is to go to Valheim and bring his spirit back. Then she realizes that she cannot bring Dillian back, and that brings her to the second game where she goes, okay, well, my rage is towards the Northmen now because they killed Dillian and they're currently taking slaves from my country, my fellow countrymen, and basically like bringing them over on ships to sacrifice. I need to help these people. That's my mission now, is to
and that's
go.
How it starts.
That's how Hellblade 2 starts.
Yeah.
Let me get the timestamp. 1046. Finally, guys, we're on Hellblade 2.
Okay, so first, as soon as I get into it, the visually, it's Unreal Engine 5. For Jesus Christ. Like, and again, I've got a lower spec. I didn't think my computer would be able to handle it. I've got a good graphics card, but I thought CPU even though it's not going to be a huge CPU based game, is it? I thought it would, just because it's supposed to be one of the best visually looking games. And my system, I had no issues with it, no stuttering,
Yeah, so
nothing. I know
I
I didn't
think
appreciate
they've
it.
optimized it really well. Like it runs on the
So
Xbox
good.
Series X at about, I
Like
think
visually,
about 30
look at
FPS
those.
at the
Look,
high setting. I think I
it's
just put
dull.
everything on high 4K
Yeah.
DLSS performance, and then I think it was running
Oh yeah.
about 90 FPS, and then I have a VRR monitor. So
So
if
and it
you,
also has, because I'm on AMD, it has FSR 3, which I thought was good as well. Because I haven't,
does it
again, I
have
don't play a lot
frame
of games, so I
gen?
didn't see that. Yeah.
So I wasn't
Uh,
using DLSS frame
DLSS.
gen. I was just using base DLSS to upscale it, and then just
Okay.
using variable refresh rate in order to any up and down. I don't know if do you know about VRR, like G-Sync, FreeSync?
I know about it very minimally.
But yeah,
Not
like
really.
if you have a game where you're like you can get a high enough frame rate and then it sort of goes up and down, VRR basically makes it so that your refresh rate will change dynamically based on the frame
Yeah.
rate, and that actually makes it so it visually it looks very smooth to you because it will go
Yeah.
up and down sort of thing. So I was just leaving it like cranked up around 90 FPS, and I think the game looked great and felt great to play sort of thing. I think you could
But
even
the
play this
deep,
at like 60 FPS, it would be fine. Like it's a very
yeah,
light game.
yeah.
Like
I
30 is
think the
probably fine either.
detail in the surroundings is fantastic. But then the weather effects
Oh my god, the
and the
weather.
motion, because of the camera angles as well, were played with a lot more. It was just fantastic piece of cinema. That's
So
what it was, right? Cinematic.
this is the first Unreal Engine 5 game to be using all of the Unreal Engine 5 features. So Unreal Engine 5 has features
Wow.
called Nanite, which is like generating these realistic like rocks and
Yeah, that was so
building
real. That
stuff
was
like
so
that. You
good.
can do that on the fly and just create like copy paste, create like realistic mountains and stuff like that. Lumen, which is the lighting system, which adds like
Yeah,
this
which is
realistic, like almost ray traced level lighting that can be done through a software path or a hardware path, sort of like ray tracing. And then you have these things called Quixel mega scans, where you see in the documentary after Hellblade 2, which we've not gone to spoilers yet, but I'd say like they basically go to they went to Iceland and they just scanned everything with like super high resolution, so they could basically
Yep.
take like a super high resolution like scan photo of stuff and bring it directly into the game, which I think looks amazing. It looks so good.
So
Go
yeah.
on.
Oh, I was going to introduce the game and give
Yeah,
a
that's why
synopsis.
go ahead.
Yeah, all right. So, as you've already said, the second game follows the first game in Senua's quest, because the main plot, obviously, of the first game was what it was. I won't spoil it just in case anyone skipped through and just wants to know what this game is. But that means she's come to Iceland, so this is where this is set.
Well,
as you
a
said.
quick question, Jesse. Do you recommend anyone to jump straight into Hellblade 2 if they haven't played the first game?
No, but I imagine some people might do.
I think a lot of people are,
You know.
especially because both of these. This is a big Game Pass game, and like
Yes.
me and you both were like, Hellblade 2 is coming out in Game Pass. Let's go back and
Yeah,
play the first
yeah.
game. But I think a lot of people are going to go, this game looks really cool. I own Game Pass or an Xbox. I want to play this. I'm just
I
going to
can play
jump straight
both.
into it.
Yeah, I think some people will. So anyway, it's set in Iceland. It follows Senua again, going through her psychosis that is still continues. She still has the continually voices in her head. A lot of the mechanics and things have carried on from the first game. A lot of the continuation of how her delusions and hallucinations manifest have been carried over. But just for this second quest that has got this huge graphical and technical update. Like again, we've said about the settings for the first game being awful, and on this game they sorted that out. Graphically looks amazing. Auditory stayed the
Shader
same 'cause we
pre-compilation
have it in
step,
this.
amazing
Yes.
graphics. Motion blur can be turned off and accessibility options.
Yeah. Yeah.
I
And
think.
so
Oh, go on.
Senua on this game is, yeah, she's on a mission in Iceland to try and find the Northmen. to try and I don't really know what her aim is, but she knows, as we've
She's
said,
trying to at the start of the game. She lets herself get
save people,
captured
right?
by a slaver because she wants to
Yeah,
go to the source of the Northman slavers and basically
yeah.
kill him in order to stop him taking all the slaves over from England.
Yeah, she wants to save people. That's really the thing that is repeated throughout the game.
Yeah.
She's found
Oh, do you know
purpose in
what
her
I love
life
about this game?
to try and save people.
Jesse, there's characters in this game. So the first
There
game,
is,
it's
there
just
is.
Senua and her psychosis. This game is
Yeah.
actual real people that you
There's
can
real people that
that can
interact
talk
with
to.
her.
Like one of the big changes from Hellblade 1 to Hellblade 2. Hellblade 2 is very grounded. Like Hellblade 1, you're fighting like demonic spirit hallucinations.
it's very
Hellblade
demonic.
2, you're fighting actual Viking warriors, and
Yeah, they're humans.
there's
yeah.
actual like Viking clans that you go and you speak to. And like certain points throughout the game, I was like, I feel like I'm playing like the Viking section in The Witcher 3, where you're just going around the clan and slaying monsters for them. Like,
And as you said, there's real characters in this game, and it's a lot more human, which we'll talk about symbolically soon as to why they've
Yep.
made people more human. We think, this is our opinion.
yeah,
But the humans in the game is very good because, again, the first game is Senua with her grief and hallucinations, delusions. In this game, you get to see how other people that are on her side and not on her side, um, see that, right, and how they interpret how she acts and who she is. And we've said that about the first game, but if anyone skipped through this video, the setting, obviously the how people act about mental health and how people treat it and how people view it was completely different, right? It wasn't medical, and they see it as, I don't know, supernatural, spiritual, whatever you want to see it, you know.
yeah.
And we see that with character interactions in this game that the first game didn't have.
But yeah, I think it's it because I've never been to Iceland, but I assume this is what Iceland looks like.
It looks like this, yeah.
I think the only other like game that I can remember that's really based in Iceland is like I think Death Stranding is very like Iceland-esque. I don't know if it's set in Iceland, but it has those big like volcanic things, and I think volcanoes are a big thing in the story of Hellblade 2.
Okay, so let's talk about what people are seeing right now. So this
Yeah.
game is similar to the first one in that it is a walking simulator for a large part, solving puzzles, which we've already seen. If you've been watching the screen, there's been kind of a puzzle solve, like in the very basic way, where she's seeing, again, symbols. The symbol thing comes back up as a puzzle. And she's seeing patterns in the world that she doesn't see otherwise. But now on the screen, you can see the combat. And how
Very
so much
cinematic.
more immersed it is, very cinematic. Look,
So
and the facial features as well on the characters, because of the motion capture technology we have now.
Yeah.
Oh my god, so good.
So I think like a big change in combat from this game was you would go into an arena and you could fight like 3 enemies at once, and you could get overwhelmed and you have to pull back and use tactics. This game, it's sort of like you fight a guy and then another guy runs over off screen and he like jumps on you and you have to attack him. And it's basically just like it's very like Hellblade 2 is much more like a movie, like physically in game. Like
the immersion is on another level. Because look, you've passed this part. Like if you just watch it on the screen, she's just jumped over that thing and she's just witnessed this, and she's interacted with it, and that's seamlessly just taking you into the combat. And again, so you've got controls on this, even though the combat is limited again.
Yeah,
you're still in it, and you've got different finishing moves, and different ways.
Yeah, I love how where in video games you have like canned animations, and when you swing your sword, the enemy always reacts in the same way. So if you hit an enemy like when they're up high, they'll take damage in one way, and if you hit them down low, they'll do the exact same canned animation. Hellblade 2 has this fluidity to it where if you hit an enemy in a certain direction, they'll like dynamically move based on how you hit them and stuff like that. Or you said you failed combat and you were attacking a guy and you attacked them in a certain way, and then when you redid the same combat, they attacked you in a completely different way.
Yeah, I found that interesting. Yeah, because again, these games are not made for you to lose or whatever, but on one extended part of combat, towards the end of the game. It was obviously the difficulty had been ramped up. It was longer, and I did
Yeah.
fail. And then when I went back into it, it started me cinematically. It actually did. It started me in the middle. Like it must have had a checkpoint in this long combat thing. Um, but the way that the enemies interacted with one another again and how they came onto screen and was different.
Yeah.
I remember. I was like, and I was surprised, and I noticed it, and I went, "Oh, that's didn't happen. Like I've literally just did it seconds ago." And
Well, the thing I also love
I
about
thought it was very
combat in
fun.
this game is it's very like cinematic, very simple, but there's so much less of it. Like I felt like in the first game, it was
Yeah,
constantly, okay, I'm going from the combat part. Now I'm going to find the hidden symbols in the world part. Now back to the
yeah,
combat part. Now back to the symbol part. And it's like this game. There's so much more walking around it, and I'm like, thank God, because the worst part of the previous game was the kind of shitty puzzles and the shitty combat. And it's like there's less of it, and I just get to look around this gorgeous environment and just take in the atmosphere and everything that's going on. I adored this game compared to the first. I love Hellblade
yeah,
2 so much more than
yeah.
the first game. And I'm so glad I played it.
Disliked so much walking, because there wasn't a lot going on with the walking, but it was so visually interesting that sometimes you did. I don't know if you did this, but sometimes you'd
What?
stop and just take a look around. Did you do that when
Yeah.
you're walking like distances and you go,
Sometimes
you
I would
know
stop
what?
and I
Let's
would
have a
look
around.
around and I'd be like, oh, there'll be some exploration stuff. And then sometimes there just wasn't anything there. Like I
Yeah,
felt
but
like there was.
then
Yeah, go on.
we found out, didn't we, that it had the same rune system where you find these runes as you go through
Yeah.
that tell extra story. And we found it gives you the first rune. We've already seen it on the
Yeah.
gameplay in front of us. And then there was a huge gap where we missed a bunch of runes. Right, there's a couple of hours where we didn't find any. And then we went, oh, where were those? Right. um, yeah. So I think that you have to do a little bit of exploration. I think I was dissuaded to begin with the exploration because I tried looking around early on, and I guess they don't have it much early on because they just want you to get into the story.
Yeah.
But I tried looking around, and I was quickly found I couldn't go places, even though the world is seemingly open to add to the immersion. But yeah, I was just like, oh, they don't want me to go here, therefore there's nothing there. They want me to do it in a linear way.
Yeah.
So even though it is a linear game, they do want you to try and find them, try and find those runes, which
Yeah, I
were
found they were kind
quite
of
well
out of the
hidden.
way a little bit.
Yeah,
Like I
because
found a
you are
bunch.
walking at a slow
I
pace.
found a bunch of the ones in the first game, but in the second game, I found like 2 or 3. And they even introduced like this mechanic of seeing faces in the world, and then find these little trees you can interact with as another collectible thing.
Yeah, yeah,
And I thought that was really cool because the idea of psychosis, seeing things that other people don't see, and you basically look at a rock formation and then you see like a face that other people don't see, or
yeah.
the idea of
Patterns.
humans, as we grow up, we see things in clouds, like our pattern recognition makes us see like creatures and faces and stuff like that.
And
But
then making.
one of the things I wanted to talk about with Hellblade 2, oh, this is something I remember you bringing up and me immediately doing as well. With how beautiful the game is, photo mode is insane in this game.
Oh my god, I forgot about that.
There was times where I'm like, oh, this is a cutscene, right? They're just pre-rendered this and they put it up on the screen. And at any point you can hit like, was it Alt R or Alt Z or something?
Yeah.
And you
can
go into
play- I
photo
think it's
mode,
Z,
and you could turn the camera and you're like, holy shit, no, this is all rendered in real time. This is
Yes.
happening right now.
So you could stop a cutscene, you can focus in on the characters, and you can edit things about that moment.
Yeah.
It was. Yeah.
You can add dynamic lights to the environment and light them.
Yes.
Like
You can light it differently.
I took this scene where you're underwater and I turned the lighting all the way down and made it really dark and creepy and like the deep dark. I was like, this looks sick.
I took some that were dark, and then I
brightened
put
them up.
artificial lights, and then brightened up key features of characters or things, to highlight them. And then you can mess around with contrast and positioning of the camera as well. You can move around. That's the wild thing, right? Because you think you're in a cutscene, it's a film, it's from one angle, but no, like you can move around the models even in the middle of a cutscene. I think that's wild.
Yeah, like because this happens on the poster for Hellblade 2 is you have Senua's with those hands that are slowly going around her head and covering them. It's very like horror-like as well at the same time. Like Hellblade has very dark themes, but it's like at that point it's like, okay, this is pre-rendered, and then you're like, wait a minute, this is happening in real time. This is just photorealistic, high definition, like human characters on a screen, and like I think it helps with like the letterboxing and the lighting and everything. Your brain just goes, this is happening right now, like because for the longest time, like I got my new monitor because it's a QD OLED. And it has like it's got peak 1000 nit brightness. It's got Dolby Vision.
So in moments like this that you can see on the screen where there's a darkness is actually darkness on OLED.
Yeah, but the thing is, because I was playing this in HDR as well with peak 1000, and when like the sun came up in the horizon, I was like, oh, like I physically felt like I was being blinded by the sun. And there's also parts in this game with like, because it's Iceland. Because this isn't a there's volcanoes in Iceland.
There is, yeah.
There's like these volcanic elements, and it's just like with these big like eruptions and explosions, and the light just fills the screen. Like this game, like shows how good like darks and like brights can be on like a.
I mean, look at this scene right here. This was a part because you've got the thunder as well.
Because for the longest time, like, because Tony was like, he came around, he's looking at my screen, he was like, "What game do you have to show it off?" And I was like, I don't actually know. Like, we looked at Cocoon with Auto HDR on, and that looks pretty good. But this like the next time Tony comes down, I'm like, Tony, check out Hellblade 2 with HDR on. It looks phenomenal. It looks so good. Because you have a HDR monitor as well, but it's like it's HDR 400. It's not like the full brightness, the full like HDR standard, which probably still looks fine, right? But I'd be interested for you to see the difference between them, or if you could tell the difference.
It's not. It's just the 1440p as well. It's not. Is yours 4K?
Yeah, 4K, 240 hertz. I remember getting my monitor, and I was like, it's 4K, QD OLED, VRR, 240 hertz, and my dad's like, oh, what games can you play at 4K 240 hertz? And I was like, well, none. But, I have the option if I have like a lesser game. Because I think because I got a powerful PC, like I got like a 4080 and a 7700X, and I was like, I think the game that's made me go, wow, I can't believe graphics look like this that I've played is probably Portal RTX. Before this point. Was because this is amazing, it's made for it, but like full path tracing, when you see that in a game, my god, that looks so good. But obviously I think with Portal RTX it's still using like lesser assets. It's based on the DirectX 9 game, right? I can't wait for more Unreal Engine 5 games, because if they're anything like Hellblade 2,
that was one of my first thoughts. I thought, if this is what Unreal Engine 5 looks like, if this is how smooth games are going to play, which I'm sure is just all credit to Ninja Theory and how good it played on my system that's not as good as yours.
You don't have to keep pointing it out, Jesse.
Yeah, I was pointing it out.
You just need a better CPU, and then you'd be pretty close
it's mostly
to mine.
CPU limitation, which I'm sure didn't affect this game too much, but I don't know.
But the reason I don't think most games are going to look like Hellblade 2 is because on console, this game is running at 30 FPS, and people hate that shit on console.
Oh, PC gamers. What? Wait, what?
Well, console gamers hate 30 FPS games. Because what happened last generation is they released the PlayStation 4 Pro and the Xbox One X, and they basically were like, oh, we have all this overhead for games. Let's start releasing these 1440p games in 60 FPS. So then console gamers got accustomed to 60 FPS, and then they released the PS5 and the Xbox Series X. The Xbox X, the Xbox naming system pisses me off because it's always the Xbox X and shit. So
one,
the Series X. They were like, okay, we're going to 4K, and then they were doing this thing where they went performance mode 60 and then quality mode 30. But as the Unreal Engine 5 has become more and more popular. They've got stuff like Lumen and Nanite. We now have a situation where a lot of games are coming out at 30 FPS. Like I say, the big examples of people were really disappointed was Starfield was 30 FPS on consoles. People didn't like that because it's very CPU limited.
Okay.
Like the thing about the consoles, they're very CPU limited. And the reason I say I'm talking about the consoles as a PC gamer is consoles are the main platform that game makers are targeting. They will try and make a game for the console first, and then they'll expand it out based on how much more performance they can get for the PC, and then they'll scale it back if they're releasing on like a Switch or something, for example, right? Or the Steam Deck or whatever. So the reason I think we're not going to see many games like Hellblade in the future is because this is like the limit of what you can do on the current gen consoles until we get like because there's the rumored PS5 Pro, or we get like a next generation of like Xbox or PlayStation consoles. I don't think we'll see like graphics this good, bar like the path tracing games. Like
Are you saying you're not going to get graphics like this on a Switch 2?
Oh, when the Switch 2 comes out, there'll only be Hellblade.
Game over. Yeah. That'll be game over. So what about the? So you said what you need to about the HDR.
Well, I wanted to go on a rant about HDR, about how like HDR sucks on Windows because, man. Okay, so Discord streaming doesn't support HDR. So if you're streaming a game to somebody, which I almost always am, it's completely washed out and impossible to see anything.
Disgusting.
Then Twitch doesn't support HDR. YouTube kind of supports HDR. OBS kind of supports recording in HDR, but not really. And then certain games that are in SDR look completely blown out when you have them in HDR. I just think the experience needs to be better. Like currently, I'm running my system with HDR turned off, and then for certain games, I'll turn it on. But for like this recording, I'm playing in SDR because I'm recording the footage, so I need to be able to show it in an SDR format for the YouTube video and people and stuff. But I wish it would, like, HDR support was better, that we could actually... I feel like the technology, like the monitors are there, but it's the software that's holding us back in terms of stuff like Discord and OBS and Twitch and YouTube
I
and
agree,
stuff like that. But here's one of the first main characters of Hellblade, which is the slaver who captures you. You'll meet this guy very early at the beginning of the game, but Senua decides to capture him and keep him as like a prisoner because she needs somebody to lead her to the head of the slavers, basically, because she doesn't know Iceland. She's come from England. She wants to look around. I really appreciate how much more grounded this game was than the first game.
Yeah,
it was so much easier to follow. Like obviously, instead of fighting mythological creatures, you're fighting Northmen like Vikings.
Yeah, like you've already seen on the gameplay, that is kind of how it pans out.
There's these actual physical, settlements and camps you would have in this location, and you kind of go around these areas, and you still have these mixes between, the real world and the Psychosis world. And that actually comes into the gameplay as well, where you have this, like, split world.
With the puzzles.
Yeah, so there's these puzzle sections that reminded me a lot of the Bloober Team's game, The Medium, where that game is rendered twice, and you constantly switch between, like, the hell world and the normal world sort of thing.
Yeah.
And the whole idea of the puzzles is you have to like focus on these bubbles, and then it would change how the world is based on which one you're in. And you'd so there'll be like a bridge that's upside down, and then you need to go to a different area and focus on this area, and then suddenly that would switch the bridge upside down, but then that would block off another area, and you'd have to dynamically change this Psychosis world in order to get through it, which I thought was really cool.
And it's symbolic of her trying to get to grips with reality as well, and switching between.
Because the first game is all about Senua living almost entirely inside this Psychosis world. Like the entire game is pretty much set in the Psychosis world.
I mean, there is a moment in the game that kind of illustrates when that begins as well. So,
but the second game is all about how somebody lives in two worlds when they have psychosis. And this was explored in like the documentary and stuff where they talk about how, well, two people who have psychosis, these worlds are real to them, so they almost do live in like two worlds at the same time. And I thought them showing it off through the gameplay was like a really cool thing to illustrate that point, where Senua kind of has both of her toes in both of these worlds at the same time and how she interacts between those. And with the mythology thing, it's like, well, that's the almost like the spirit world where she can commune with the spirit. But I want to talk about more, but I don't know if I can without going into like story
Yeah,
spoilers.
I'm not sure. I'm thinking as you're talking, and I'm thinking about things that I could mention, but I'm not sure what would count as spoilers or not. Because I've said previously about that two-dimension thing, so we can say about those puzzles, how those puzzles use that dynamic, and that's good. Yeah, so let's just talk about the puzzles then. So
I was so happy that there wasn't just walk around the environment and focus on like a random tree that's shaped in a T rune. It was actually, it felt like there was real like interesting puzzle design that went into this game.
The puzzles were more interesting, more dynamic. Yeah,
there was less combat, and it was quicker and more cinematic. And I just thought they took the because I saw some people complain on the reviews of the store page saying, "Oh, there's way less combat and the rune focusing puzzles than there was in the first game." I'm like, great, because that was the weakest element of the game. If there's less of it and more good stuff, which is the story, I'm all for that. I think that's great, personally.
And even for the walking parts like we have here, the walking parts have a purpose. Like, not only is the environment more gorgeous, right, and it's absolutely fantastic, but there's normally a purpose for you to go in any location. So you're here with the slaver, and he's leading you somewhere, right, and you're having this conversation as you go, and you're having the hallucinations or
slipping into the psychosis world.
Yeah. And then but it's the same throughout the game. That anytime you have somewhere you're walking, you know where you're going. Like, there's a generally a purpose to your wandering, whereas in the first game, you're just trying to make it to hell. Like, you're just passing these different terrains to get there. It's nothing's really explained. Like, oh, now we need to go here for this reason. Whereas that is the case in this game.
Yeah, like, is there anything else about Hellblade 2 we can talk about without going into spoilers? Because I feel like I'm struggling now. Like, I would say generally I much preferred this game. I'd highly recommend you play it, especially if you have Game Pass, because you can just play the first Hellblade and this game on Game Pass. It's really amazing looking game. It runs pretty well.
It's still short.
Most
6 hours.
systems. Yeah, apparently according to Xbox Game Pass, it took me it took me 6 hours to beat it, but I also don't fully trust the Xbox Game Pass timekeeper. I trust the Steam one.
It has how long to be integrated, and it tells you that's similar. It's something around there anyway. It's 5, 6, 7, 8 hours or something around there.
I saw some people complaining saying, "Oh, it's like a 4-hour game," and I'm like,
I did see that as well. Yeah.
I'd much rather play a interesting 4-hour game than a really boring like 150-hour Assassin's Creed Valhalla game. You know?
Oh, for sure. Where everything's copied and pasted and repetitive.
All I'm saying is, Hellblade 2, the much better Viking game. L Assassin's Creed, you know.
Yeah. Even though there's still rocks and stones and interesting stone formations in this. I think we've covered all bases, spoiler free.
This game is I didn't like the first game as much as this, but I love this game. I think it's fantastic.
Yeah. So they fixed a lot of problems that maybe you might have if you're picky. You might have issues with in the first game. They fixed those for the second game, so that the gameplay is there's more of the things you like, less of the things you don't. More interactive, more cinematic, more visually stunning. And it keeps the things that were good in the first game as well. It doesn't get rid of those. So the delusions, hallucinations, auditory, visual effects are still there. Everything's still represented in her psychosis. But as you said, like the main
for me
thing
personally,
is more grounded.
They have less of the things that are bad, which are the combat and the bad puzzles, and then there's just more story, and there's genuinely characters inside this game rather than Like you have conversations with real people who really exist, which is not something you do in the first game at
Yeah.
all. Um, but yeah, I think the problem with the game like Hellblade 2 or even Hellblade 1 is it's such a story-based game that it's almost hard to talk about the game without going into the story and kind of taking away some of the
Well, I think we've done
element
a
of
good job.
playing
We've
it.
probably talked quite a lot about it on a
Yeah,
technical level.
it's
So
amazing. Check it out.
yeah,
Okay.
for real.
I'm putting a
Right, spoilers from
timestamp
here on.
3:25. We're talking about spoilers for Hellblade 2 now. Oh, this part I loved where you're walking around the village and you see like the empty
Yeah.
cradle and you're just like, "Oh, okay, I know what that's
I,
symbolizing."
I was going to say before we said about spoilers, if you did want to roll the tape back, because I feel like they're getting into the game now. Like they just showed the first however long we've been talking of the game.
Well, this is literally the start of the game, like for as long
Yeah,
as
I know. But you know, since it's not a long game, it's proportionally a bit of it, isn't it?
okay. So, if you're at this
But
point, you either like don't care about spoilers or you've played the game. So, the reason I
yeah,
was
it
bringing up
doesn't
The
matter
Witcher
either way.
3 is because throughout Hellblade 2, you literally go through and you talk to Viking. Like, you're essentially going around slaying giants for different Viking clans, which I thought was great because
Yeah.
it's really like contextualizing this, like, almost shared psychosis. Because in Hellblade 1, you're dealing with Senua's psychosis and how people see that as she sees it as her darkness that will spread corruption everywhere. But in the second game, people have this shared psychosis of giants, and we see this with like the first giant of it's a volcano going off, and they're going, "Oh God, the giants are angry and they're attacking," and like there's these. Obviously, if you're in like the olden days and you have no concept of geographic disturbances like earthquakes and volcanic eruptions and stuff like that,
activity.
you'd be like, oh my god, the gods are attacking us, there's a giant attacking us, like so you get to explore Senua's psychosis in order to understand other people's idea of how the world works. And I think that goes really deep into the story, like because you have
it builds up a cultural atmosphere, and as you said, it's how people psychologically experience things other than Senua, right? And it's also interesting historically because it is how things would have been, right? Like as you said, with no knowledge of environmental understanding. They would have blamed it on something spiritual or supernatural or the gods or something.
So seeing the runes in the world, there's still a couple of these puzzles still, but
but you know, as you said about signposting,
yeah,
and how games these days they like treat you like you're a child by just giving you white steps and yellow or red things, right? It's the same on like this puzzle here, where in every puzzle that's similar to this, where the way is blocked and you need to find the symbols. Which, by the way, look how crazy that door feature is. Like the motion and how it reacts. When you're close to the symbol, you get all the red symbols that pop up in the world. You know what I mean? That we've just seen. To illustrate that you're nearby, and then you just stand there and look around a little bit.
But it's definitely a very dark game because you've got like
easier,
these symbols that are represented with dismembered corpses stitched together and stuff like that. I love how like when you're in one of the zones, like the whole world, like there's these skulls and fragments of stuff just floating around like in this altered world, the laws of physics don't apply. Like it's like a different world you're in, and it's symbolized through like gravity works differently here. Mythos works different. Like everything is slightly different. It's like in Stranger Things, their version of their like second world is called the Upside Down, where everything's like slightly different, you know.
But as we were saying about Hellblade 1, although I can't imagine anyone skipped that and got to this far in it, how people with psychosis find patterns and things in the world. And then you're saying about bones and blood and skulls and dismembered bodies. It's the same. It's just whatever's in your environment. She's still finding patterns that are seemingly important to her there. And then when she interacts with other characters, because she seems to be doing things or looking at things in a way that no one else has,
Yeah.
because of their supernatural beliefs and everything, and the way mental health
Well,
is
so
not
let's talk about
understood.
some of the characters, right?
The
So you have
characters treat it differently, don't they?
yeah. So we have, as well as our slaver guy who gets captured, who Senya's using to navigate. I think I have footage of it actually. I can go to it.
Yeah, so you've got the slaver that you meet at the
You
start
have
there.
this area here where you have like, I love this. HDRs are amazing. Where you have like this volcano's about, and they're doing like a sacrifice ritual of a bunch of like captured
Oh yeah, I remember that. Yeah.
guys, and this guy looks at Senua and he was like, "I knew you were coming. I knew you were gonna
Yeah.
be. I knew someone." And someone was like, "How did you know I was gonna be here?" And he looks in Senua as a way as somebody who almost understands her world, but it's
Yeah.
almost as it like from it looking outside the psychosis, it's probably like he's somebody who also may suffer from some ailment and he understands what it's like to be different, but the
Well,
way
yeah,
he
so-
sees it is like it's a supernatural power and we
sure.
share this
'Cause he is an
ideology,
outsider.
this frame
He's
of reference.
definitely an outsider. He's definitely an outsider, like, and seen as different as well. You can see that with the interactions with other characters that he is that way. And yeah, that he treats her as though it's a good thing. You know, her
Yeah.
ability to see the world.
Well, I think that is
is
something beautiful from the
a
first
power.
game as Senua comes to accept her psychosis almost and use it to her advantage because she literally does start. They're like, oh, she has the ability to slay the giants. And
Yeah.
she goes, well, this psychosis, it makes me see awful things, but it also helps me save people by getting rid of the
help
giants
people.
that are ailing people.
Which is the point of the game, is a lot of the voices convey she's here to save people, and she has to make these moral decisions. I don't know how much attention you paid to those uncontrollable voices in your ear, but
Furies.
some of the moral decisions every time she was like, you can kill this person, or you could let them live, right? Which
Well,
is
there's
what she did with
these
the slaver.
there's these people
And then-
she sees. So I was just say like as they're on screen that I think they're called Draugrs or something, but they're basically like
Yeah.
she sees them as like zombie
Draugr.
undead creatures, right? But they
Yeah.
they in the real world they're probably just like a tribe of cannibals who literally
Yeah.
like
As you
people
can kinda see
literally
there,
did
yeah.
eat people like at some
Yeah,
point.
'cause he's got their head in the mouth there, yeah.
But I think
Biting
it's
at the flesh.
sometimes reality is more terrifying than our imagination.
Yeah,
you know?
yeah. Which is illustrated through this cinema.
I'm sorry, what were you saying?
I can't remember what I was saying.
Okay.
I thought it was something important, but otherwise,
But basically,
Yeah.
the way that I gotta skip because I'm running out of footage.
that's fine.
But the way it culminates is essentially as you go through the game of Hellblade 2, you're slaying these giants, and it culminates in these big, epic, cinematic boss fights where the first one is like you essentially have to figure out their story.
Yeah,
Like,
you have
going
to figure
through
out their
an
name.
Yeah, because that's the thing
Who
in
are
like
they?
mythology. Your true name is like Rumpelstiltskin's the best
Identity,
example I can
yeah.
come up with. Where if you know his real name, then you have power over him. I learned
Mm.
that from Shrek 4. Everyone's favorite Shrek film.
That's where I get all my mythology from.
Yeah, but like she basically learns their backstory, and then she is able to basically tame them through like fighting,
Yeah, so
calm their
This
rage.
is something you pointed out, but it gets pointed out in the game as you go through, because I was kind of playing this passively. I paid a lot of attention to the first game, and I was looking for the how they've illustrated psychosis. And then by the time I got to the second game, I just wanted a smooth experience, just sitting through the game and experience it, and I was just in awe of everything. And so I wasn't thinking too deeply about it. So I didn't figure it out, I think, till much later than you in the games. But those names was humanizing them, right? So those giants that she has to slay, and and all other humans in the game see them as giants as well. Like they see them as these unslayable, untouchable, powerful entities that control. Sometimes they control parts of the weather, right? And sometimes they control.
Well,
the
because
environment,
like
what happens.
literally the first one you fight, there's a volcano going
Yeah,
off.
and the second one is the tides and sea, right?
Yes, so they're tied directly to geological events.
Yeah.
And if you were like a someone in history with like a lesser understanding of these events, you go, "Oh, Senua has stopped the tides going, or the volcano stopped. She must have slayed the giant, and to their understanding, like in their reality, you did do that. In the same way that Senua's psychosis is real to her, their shared psychosis of the idea of giants and gods and stuff
and the myth,
is real to them. And they
Yeah.
really believe that you've gone around and slayed these giants, and that's represented in the game through an actual slaying event. But what I theorize is happening is right place, right time. She's actually just, it's seeming like she's stopping the weather going off or the volcanoes erupting, and people are going, oh, this must be what Senua's doing. And I think it is cool how they've laid it out in, like, I don't know. You kind of do learn about the characters and the story behind, because the giants also represent a great grief that's come upon the village.
Yes.
I remember the sea one is a great betrayal, right? Because it's the idea of there was the man who's basically sold out his village, the other people, and the way that you cure this grief is by bringing all these people together and stopping the storms. I don't know, like it's.
And you recognize him. You recognize him as someone and not just the betrayer, right? You learn his name and his story, and you humanize him. You try and understand him as a human being rather than this thing and judging him by the deed he's done, right?
Yeah.
But that one was a strange one because you still do defeat that in like battle. You don't calm that. But I guess by learning him and treating him as a human, that calmed him. And turned him to stone or whatever.
Yeah, I think because I was thinking like the first one feels like, oh, the volcano stopped and maybe Senua stopped that. I think the second boss, like as you're fighting them, people are seeing this boss and attacking him. I'm wondering if that's part of Senua's psychosis, like the actual physical battle isn't happening in real life, but inside of Senua's psychosis, and then what's actually happening in real life is in this other split real world that's different from her psychosis world.
This is something that I questioned with you, and I don't know the answer to this, because on the first one, so we've already told people this is a volcano, but it's this mother who left the story behind the volcanic happenings is because of this giant, and the giant is this mother to this child, and you just retrieve her child and learn about her story, learn her name, humanize her, and then you go to where she is. And that was a great piece of cinema as well, the volcanic.
Well, I think it's so cool because you have this music going off, and as the beat drops, it's like these volcanic waves come out and destroy
it's rhythmic,
everything.
Isn't it?
It's like boom, 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 and it's like these waves of lava kill everything, and you basically just have to run from cover to cover. It's very simplistic mechanically, but it feels really fun and cinematic to play through.
I felt the same way. I said this is so dumb and easy, but it's Lord, am I enjoying it. Now, but the point I was going to make is you never see, like, you see the giant and you give over her baby, and that calms her and calms the volcano. But later on, then another character, when he's vouching, like, for her, he says she can slay giants. I've seen her do it.
Yeah.
And I just don't understand what that means. Maybe I'm not supposed to, because I'm like, has this guy seen her go into a volcano and seen the giant? We don't think so, right? We think that's part of her delusion.
I think that the vouching is she's basically most people see Senua and they're scared because they go, oh, she's psychotic, she's like a witch. But then there's these people with this belief that, oh, there's giants and there's a great omen that needs to be slayed, and then suddenly Senua goes away and she comes out of the cave, and then the lava stops and she goes, and then she says, I know the name of this woman, there's this story, I've reunited her with her baby, I've slain the giant. And then people goes like, because you have to understand, mythos and the idea of giants, everything comes from stories. Like you look at great gods and mythology, everything is based on somebody going away and going, I spoke to a burning bush over here. And somebody goes, I believe you, and this is what happened. And then the more times the story gets past time, it gets passed down, the more people believe it, because the people who were actually there are dead by that point.
Maybe I was giving too much credit to the modern day understanding of how things work and needing evidence for things, whereas that definitely wasn't the case. Sometimes there wasn't evidence based.
I mean, this is just, I have no idea if this was the intended way to look at it, but this is just my way of looking at the story is that there is no physical empirical evidence that Senua is actually slaying giants, but through psychosis and people seeing her as like this seer or this person who can help, and geographical events happening and stopping happening, and Senua coming and going, I'm from an outside world and I understand what's happening, and I'm going to stop the giants to save you all. Their belief in Senua is what makes them strong, and their belief in the giants that come from the big fucking Viking dude is what makes them weak. Like, the whole idea of Senua's Hellblade 2 is belief in yourself and others around you makes you strong, and fear makes you weak. And that's like a whole theme about Hellblade 2.
Let's get to that third giant then. Let's get to that third giant. Yes. So the first giant was the volcano. The second giant was the waves and destroying ships. And these are events. Now, how does that then link onto the third giant, which was literally a human that we saw?
So the third giant is, eventually the slaver's son, or the slaver guy, he becomes your friend and ally, and he starts to believe in you and sees that you have been, quotation marks, quote unquote, slaying the giants, and he starts to have belief behind you.
And you've linked two clans together as well, right?
Yes.
The two clans both believe you, and they're working together.
And he says, like, I have faith in my father, like, he will, help us slay the last giant, because his father has been kidnapping people and sacrificing them to the god.
Yeah.
And
because the giant, so the story is that there's a giant that comes and eats people, and
I think
they
don't
want to be eaten, and it says it satisfies. Do you say something about it satisfying?
Satiates the god if it won't come and destroy everyone if they sacrifice enough people. I think what's beautiful before this point as well, there's a point in the story where they go through like a forbidden forest that basically starts to give them all visions. And I love that Senua is unaffected by this almost, because one, she knows what psychosis is. She doesn't give a if somebody starts. She literally has visions all the time, so she doesn't give a shit. But number two, Senua doesn't have a framework that this forest will give you visions. So to her, it does nothing to her, because it's basically their shared psychosis belief is that this village is this fucking forest is haunted and will give you visions. And Senua doesn't have that because that's not part of her mythos, her beliefs, her ideas. So nothing happens to her.
So it affects them because they already have it implanted.
And I love that. This one point, because it's more beautiful at the end of the story, where the son goes, "I've had a vision of what I must do, but I don't know if I can do it." Basically, he's like crying. And as you play through the game, like, you understand that he knows that the giants aren't real, and that he's always known that his father is the one who's put the idea of the giants into people's head to use fear to control people. He knows that he must, to destroy the idea of the giants, he must take down his own father. Like a Oedipus sort of,
Yeah, that's a huge trope in a lot of mythological things, is facing up to your father or becoming that bigger thing.
But basically, you go to the father for help. He's like, I'm not going to help you. I want to keep sacrificing people. And you basically find out that through the story, he's been sacrificing people to keep people fearful of him, because he understands power comes from fear. And if people fear him, he can control over them. And it's about you ripping away that fear. And this may be one of my favorite boss fight, like cinematic boss fights in a game.
Yeah.
Where you're literally fighting the father. And as you fight him, he is like the most powerful man in the world. He's not like a fit guy. He's like a fat old dude.
Old guy, yeah. But he's exactly how someone would look who was powerful in those times. Like, they're fat because they've overindulged. They've got that. But he's not healthy.
Yeah.
right? Because it's in this time period, no one's healthy. He's got his
But
wounds
I
and
think
battle scars.
I think the beauty of it is, as you're fighting him, he has like
Yeah,
demonic powers, and
yeah.
he's
He
so
stops everything
strong.
you're doing. He never.
But then,
You know,
as you rip away this fear and you increase your belief, like his move set literally changes, and you're like, oh my god,
it's my favorite.
he's such a
It's so
weak old
good.
man.
He
He's
is a
so
weak old man. Yeah,
powerless. Like
and
he
it's so
literally has
fun.
nothing. He cannot destroy me.
Yeah,
Everything, all of his power comes from his ideas of fear. And when you rip away
yeah.
that fear and you increase your belief, then you can destroy his ideology.
So
I think
again, you
Hellblade
slay
2,
him as well.
like I love the ideology of Hellblade 2. I think it
Me
is
too. Me
so
too.
beautiful.
Satisfying
Um,
ending as well.
yeah. So
Yeah,
like Hellblade 2, I fucking adore. I love this game. And
yeah,
I think I almost didn't play it because I like borderline disliked Hellblade 1.
yeah. So with the end boss, the leader and the father of the
I
slaver,
saw people
um,
genuinely confused on like the Steam forums, like, "Oh, will there be
about.
a DLC where we fight the third giant boss?" And I'm like, they don't get it. They don't get the ideas behind Hellblade 2.
It's because it's so good. It's because like us as the player, we're so ingrained in this. This is why it's so good, right?
Yeah,
So twofold. One, what you've said about you know, because you've just described the way his demeanor changes, and you said, "Oh, he is so like he's demonic," and then you said, "Oh, and now he's so weak," and that is you as the player, so immersed, you understand it with Sanua and with the others. That's the changeover, right?
yeah.
It's represented in the game, but then it's represented in the minds of us as players. I think that's fantastic because then we go, yeah, he is just another guy. He's just another enemy
Yeah.
in the game. It's just whatever. He's not got
I
anything
think it's
about
so
him.
beautiful because there's like times in games where um you want to represent something in media, but it's so hard to do
Yeah,
in like a film or in like a song or a piece of art
yeah,
like a painting.
yeah,
But in games you can physically change mechanics. I mean,
yeah.
oh, I really don't want to spoil stuff, but other
We're on
games that
spoilers.
no, I don't want to go and spoil two other games that I love. But
Oh,
if you want,
okay, I understand. Yeah.
if you want to play a game that mechanically teaches you like a concept of like grief, or mechanically teaches you a concept of like changing your perspective of the world, I highly recommend Jesse. Write these games down. You need to play Brothers: A Tale of Two Sons. Oh my
Yeah, I've
god,
got that. I've got
the
that.
video game mechanic like caused me so much pain that I can't express to you like how it changed my perception. And like
Okay.
a mechanical like Papers, Please is fucking phenomenal. It's
Oh,
such
I
a
haven't played
simple
that, no.
game. I think Charlie Brooker said it's his favorite video game of all time.
Well, that's
and
a something. Yeah.
and like I don't know if you know this, Charlie Brooker, before he did TV stuff, he used to review video games. He was like a video
fun.
game reviewer.
That's
And I think like that game is perfect for being like, oh, I keep failing, and then you figure out why, and you're like, oh my god, that's amazing. That's so well put together. It's like, yeah, I don't want to spoil stuff, but Papers,
Good
Please,
games.
and Brothers: Tale of Two Sons, and play the original Brothers: A Tale of Two Sons, because they completely ruined the mechanic in the remake they just did.
Oh, okay. The other thing I was going to say about that final boss is because I said about how it changes your mind as a player interacting with it. But the thing you said about people online asking, "Oh, when's the third giant?" That is again fantastic because then you've got some people that have soaked into the beliefs of the guy who's trying to instill fear in everyone and trying to get them to believe things. Like it's repeated so much in the game about this giant and about this thing that eats people. Even
Yeah.
right at the end, he's still saying it. He says, "Because of me, the reason." He's trying to convince you, Senua, and you as a player, and those people that are going, "Oh, where's the third giant?" They've they've been tricked too
They're
by
in the
this character.
psychosis.
They're in it.
They think they're
It's
playing
so good.
God of War on the
Yeah,
PS4, you know?
yeah.
They're like, okay,
Um,
I'm Kratos, I need to go slay the next god. Where's the
because
next
right
god?
at the end, so like this is big spoilers that we're in, but we've already gone through. But like he's repeating it hard. He goes aggressive. He goes. He changes. it's scary. He's scary, but it kind of it comes across believable because he's like, this is why things are happening, and
He's
this is
leader
the
of the
way.
clan. He has
Because
some. Because another thing you have to remember, Jesse, as you start beating him down, people slowly start forming a crowd around you, and they're like, "Wait, he's not indestructible.
Yeah.
He's not the most powerful leader in the world."
They learn as you're learning. Yeah.
And people start to rally around Senua as well. She becomes like a powerful force for good.
Yeah.
Almost.
So in terms of gameplay, what it looks like then is he just becomes this sluggish because he's really powerful when you first start fighting him, and he has this demonic power, as you said, and none of your attacks are hurting him, stopping him. He's not staggering, nothing. He's even still big talking, going, "Is that all you've got? Look, you're weak." Like he's trying to beat you down and get you still in the battle to believe in his power. Then as you don't, and you same as you slayed the other two giants, you humanized him, you understood his name, you knew he was a person.
Yeah.
Then visually and mechanically, like you saw, he's just a fat old man. Like if you try to imagine, you're tough, you're a warrior, and he's a fat, overindulged old man who probably hasn't fought anyone in a while. And he's sluggish.
Well, he's become so weak because his power literally comes from telling other people.
From belief. Yeah.
Yeah. So he's probably rusty as well. He probably hasn't fought in a real battle in a very long time.
Sure. And even if he has, he's not fit for it. Whereas you've overcome trials. You're a literal warrior of the lands, and you've done some crazy stuff. He's not going to beat you. You're faster, and that comes across. You come across faster as soon as you understood that. And understood he was just a fat old man. You mechanically in the game, you become faster at attacking, and they do more damage, and they seemingly have a larger impact, and that changes the belief of you as the player as well. It's so good. It's satisfying ending, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's really satisfying. It comes to an end as opposed to the first game.
Yeah, after you slayed the second giant, it kind of popped up into the sky. And I was like, is the game going to end here? Because that was like, it kind of like focuses on that for a second. I was like, are they just going to cut to black and just end it here? Like they could, and I would be kind of satisfied. But the ending they did do is so good. I'm so glad they did.
I was worried about the pacing as well when I was playing it. You've just reminded me. Because,
it's much better paced than the first game for sure.
Yeah, but I know how long the game is. Right, I know it's only so many hours. And it takes a large amount of it, beginning, setting it up, going through puzzles before you even get to the first giant. Like all the gameplay we've watched so far, there's no mention of giants. You've not even met all the characters.
Yeah.
Like you just it's barely set it up, right? And you get to the first giant, I felt, and I've played most of the game. And then you come across the other clan, and you say, well, I'm on my way to the leader of the other clan. And they're like, well, first do something for us. We've got this other giant, right? Can you slay this other giant for us? And then you have to do that ethical dilemma. The voices make the ethical dilemma of whether to do that or go in straight to where you're supposed to go. But you make the decision to slay the second giant. And like you said, I'm thinking, wait, is it going to cliffhang again? Because I'm looking at the time. I've only got so many hours left. Am I going to go and slay the second giant? And that's good, because surely I haven't got time for 2 more giants. It's taken all of this time just to do one, and I'm running out of time on the game. I've only got a couple hours left. And I was worried about pacing in the middle there, but it turned out fantastically. I wasn't worried. By the end of it, I was like, oh no, this was fantastic.
When I was playing Hellblade 1, I was constantly watching the clock, and I was like, when is this gonna end? I couldn't put Hellblade 2 down. This footage I recorded here, I think it's about 50 minutes long. I opened Hellblade in the morning before I went and got up. And I was like, because I left it downloading the night before. And I was like, I'll just go into the options menu. And I'll just set up the options menu and be like, oh, DLSS, put it on 4K performance mode, set up all the HDR and the sound settings so it's not too loud. And then I'll go off and get up, and then I'll come back and I'll play it for a bit. I accidentally hit new game, and I was like, okay, well, I don't know where I can save, so I'll play for a bit. And then I was like, I couldn't put the game down. That's the whole. Yeah. That's what I felt the whole time playing Hellblade 2
sense.
Was I can't put the game down. It's so I just want to keep going. It's so engaging to me.
That makes sense because I was ahead of you on Hellblade 1, and then And then I finished it, and basically they did go into Hellblade 2 straight away. Like the next, it was the next day.
Yeah, I
finished
literally
one, went straight
in
into 2,
same.
and I finished 2, and then you sent me a message not long after saying, "Oh, I finished 2," and I'm like, "How? You're behind me?" And I've kind of I've been, I've kind of blasted through it. And that must be the reason why you you played through the night.
Yeah, literally, I
Yeah.
just turned on my computer, and then I was like, I'm just gonna put HDR on. I literally turned off my other side monitors because I have 3 monitors. I turned off my side monitors, and I just had
That's immersion.
the
Right
full
there.
immersion. It was like late at night for some of it, and it was dark. Had the rich black OLED. My headphones on. I was so immersed. I was like, "This is
So
sick.
good.
It's so good."
That's what I love. I love that shit. It's so good.
But yeah, if anyone at this point is some reason watching this and hasn't played Hellblade 2 yet, you gotta try it. It's so good.
And the same with this game. There's a documentary that goes with it. It's about 40 minutes long, describing their approach on this game, and again, more to do with psychosis. And there's interviews with people who have psychotic disorders.
Yeah, I think it's also like it helped me like genuinely playing through Hellblade 1 and Hellblade 2. Genuinely helped my understanding of psychosis. I genuinely didn't understand the idea of people, living this dual reality and it being so real to them that they would completely change that. Because to me, I would think, oh, I would understand the concept that if I was in a room full of demons and undead creatures, that I would know it wasn't real. But to them, that is their reality at that point. Like, you have to imagine it from the perspective of when you're in a dream, you don't know that you're dreaming. And that's what it's like when someone's in psychosis. Like, it's not just something you can snap out of. Like, to them, this is really happening. And I think that's what a lot of people struggle with. Like, the idea of putting themselves in somebody else's shoes. And it really makes me empathize with people who have to go through this on like a daily basis. It must be like awful to go through. And I'm glad to see people are getting help.
It's extra good with the environmental and historical background.
Yeah.
The documentaries helped me because I already knew quite a lot about the psychological aspect, but the documentaries helped me understand the historical and the mythological, because they told you on the first documentary, that's the one that goes more in depth about the creating of the first game. It told you, okay, well, this is where we started with characters and location and destination. Okay, this was the historical framework, and this is where we got the name Senua from. And they just went through all of that, as well as for those that just do want to watch the documentaries as well, because it helps your understanding of the games.
Because they literally have them in the game
patients
at the end that you can watch. And
they're literally in game. But they're just the YouTube videos. You can watch them on YouTube.
Well, that's something interesting we should point out was what's the name, like Melina Jurgensen or something, the main actress behind Jurgens, the woman who plays Senua. She was a video editor who was a stand-in for the main actress of Senua, and it got to a point where they were like, oh, we don't think we could make the game without you. Like, you've just become Senua at this point.
Yeah, I think they kind of tricked her, is what they make it sound like.
But she edited the video for the first documentary because she is actually a video editor. So the woman playing
she was a video editor for Ninja Theory.
Yeah.
She's German, I think.
Ninja Theory is Cambridge-based. Because I didn't know this going in. I didn't realize that they were.
No, me neither.
In the same county as me.
I think some people were speculating that she was.
I know Jagex is in Cambridge, but I didn't realize Ninja Theory was as well.
But yeah, Ninja Theory, she was a video editor for them, and then they used her as a placeholder when they were developing the game. Got her to do some of the acting for the character, and then they kind of tricked her into just being like, you're pretty good at this. Maybe you should maybe you should be the character that we base this off.
But I think she does a fantastic job. Like I
read as well.
In this.
For the second game, I read as well that she did actually do hundreds of hours of stunt training.
Okay.
Like in combat training and
sword
stuff
fighting and stuff.
Yeah, things like that. It really ups the production value because the motion capture. I saw this video as well where she was talking about the motion capture and with the technology with Unreal Engine 5. She was saying because people are like, is it more difficult to do this where everything is so much more detailed and so much more to play with
Yeah.
in terms of motion capture and Unreal Engine 5 with all the detail? And she said no. In fact, it makes it a bit easier because she can focus on her acting performance, and she knows that that is going to translate because of how much detail is in it, right? She knows the facial expressions are going to translate. She knows the movements are going to translate, and you don't have to go back into it and start tinkering with it after you've done it to make it look whatever, because it's just so good at capturing it. So she said, oh, it makes it easier. So that's probably why she put so much effort into performance and stunts and stuff, because she knew that it was going to pop up. And she does a good job, then it would be good on the game.
I think it's just like a beautiful culmination of everything coming together is the fact that we have this game, and then it kind of makes me sad that the second game's getting such a negative reaction from like it almost seems polarizing, the second game. Like a lot of people
I haven't really
not
seen
getting
anything,
it.
so okay, is that what you're referring to? Because I haven't spent any time looking at
Well,
other people's
definitely like
reactions.
I think some people are saying like not a lot of people are playing this on release. Like the state of its launch, like less people played this than like Redfall or even like
What?
Hi-Fi Rush or
Surely that can't be true.
No, it's true. Like a
Red-
lot less people are playing Hellblade 2 than the other Xbox,
Oh,
Microsoft
damn.
stuff they're putting out, and it's a shame because it's really like great, but I can also understand like it's really up to interpretation, and I can understand if you're like a dude bro that owns an Xbox to play Halo, and then you're going like, what the fuck? Where's the last boss? Where's the last giant I need to go and slay? I don't understand what's going on. I thought this was God of War. I could kind of understand why you disliked it, and I borderline disliked the first game. So like, I don't think it's that unreasonable that these games can be polarizing because they are very gameplay light, and I would even compare them to stuff like, I don't know if you remember the game, the Order, was it 66 or something?
1880, yeah, something like that.
Or like
I remember when it
Rise,
came out.
Son of Rome.
I never played it. Yeah. Oh yeah, Son of Rome. Yeah, I played a little bit of that.
But
I did
because I think a lot of
manage to get through
people say with these sort of games that are very story heavy and very cinematic, they go, well, why couldn't it have just been a film? Why does it need to be a game? But I think once you understand some of those like mechanical things, like the final boss fight, holy shit, like that being a mechanical thing inside a game in the context of it, it makes it like so much more impactful.
This is one of the things I like games. Yeah, this is one of the things I like about games is that I think they're the ultimate medium so far, right? Because pictures are pictures. Right? They don't move, they don't do anything, they just are. And then you've got music that does move, and it does have parts and components to it, and it is changing, so it can tell stories and it can do things. In audio. Film is an evolution where you have those moving pictures and you have music and sound and intonation and all the dynamics of film and cinema. Video game is film, but where the viewer is interacting with it. This is my how I see games as a medium. And it is, if you're a good game writer, because I've listened to game writers talk about this, they take that into perspective quite often. They take the player into perspective and how they're going to interact with the game. And that's when you end up with a game like this, is where they've gone, or how can we make the player be going through this, right? So if it was a film, it wouldn't have been as good.
Yeah,
you would have seen it, you would have heard it, but you would have been removed from it.
Based on your description, that's good, totally, Jesse. You're saying like games are the ultimate evolution of media. Doesn't that mean that VR should be the ultimate evolution of media?
It should.
But the problem is, Valve came and dropped the best VR game of all time, and then they said, okay, now we're leaving, and then nobody did anything else with VR.
So can you imagine how this game would be if the quality and the immersion was there on VR, where
The
this
first,
felt
there's a
quite
VR
realistic.
version of the first game. I don't know if you
Is
know
there?
this. Yes,
do
but
not.
it's essentially
It's
you're
stripped back.
it's essentially just like a tagged on thing. It's not like they built it up from the ground up for VR. Essentially, your head is the camera, and then you're still controlling Senua like a gamepad, like an Xbox 360 controller.
Oh no! All right.
So it's not
Well,
like I would love to see a from the ground up VR Hellblade game, but the problem is Microsoft does not own a VR headset, so they are not going to make like PlayStation makes VR games, but
Well, is there also a problem with hardware as well? Is that a problem? I don't know much about VR. Like, because could you take something this detailed, this
yeah,
immersive,
yeah,
and put it on VR,
PC
and
VR definitely, yeah.
where you can see it and it looks real, like these rocks look real? Would that
I
be
think
the case?
if you want, Jesse, I'll let you play Half-Life Alyx on my VR system, and you'll be going, "Oh my god!" So I don't know if you know this, but for Half-Life Alyx, Valve actually rendered everything in 8K and then down-sampled it back down to smaller sizes.
That's
so
fantastic.
it looks fucking phenomenal in like you can do wonders, and the immersion you get. Like imagine you're playing. You know that moment where those hands are coming across your face. One of my favorite moments in playing Phasmophobia in VR, when you get killed in Phasmophobia by the ghosts, these hands come across your face and cover them, like these ghost hands. Playing that in VR is so like immersive and terrifying, yeah. I think you would be terrified to play Hellblade in VR if it was like a full from the ground up.
Me too. That's what I mean. Like, some things about it would have to be changed. Like the physical feeling and things you probably won't have because VR doesn't have that fourth dimension as much, does it? But
haptics.
yeah, I guess. But like someone grabbing your foot, which has just happened on screen a second ago, you couldn't have that. I guess like it wouldn't feel as good. Maybe you could have it, but then you'd look. I don't know. But the auditory is so heavy on this. The voices as you're trying to navigate and walk around, and if you were actually swinging your controllers.
Swinging your sword and all that.
And they were blocking it, and you know, I don't know. Yeah, that's it. If it was smooth like the gameplay on this was, and yeah, that would just be an insane game. But I think we're a long way off something like that.
Yeah.
I'm not a VR player, so I don't know that.
There's a software problem with VR right now. Like there is no Hellblade in VR. There is no like, you know, no one's making big games with VR basically. Like I alluded to Half-Life Alyx being the best VR game of all time, and that came out 4 years ago. Like it's true. No one's topped Valve. My favorite VR games are like Gorilla Tag, which is basically, you know, is like a Unity.
Basically, it's a workout
game. Yeah.
Yeah.
As a professional Gorilla Tag player, it is a workout. I think we're divulging now. I think we're
done.
Losing the point.
I don't think. Is there anything else on your list there of anything to talk about? I mean, we've talked about the story. We talked about.
I mean, other than going into another, you know, talk about philosophy and psychology, which we probably could.
I think we've done quite a lot on that already.
Yeah, I would recommend Hellblade 2 to anyone. Hellblade 1, I'm kind of 50-50 on. But I think it's so important to Hellblade 2 that you kind of need to play it. Even though I felt like it was a really like up and down game in terms of like quality and how much I enjoyed it.
Hellblade 1 came out in 2017, so
there's 7 years between
7 years ago, yeah.
And the average development of 7 years these days. But it's awesome to see like how different and how much, you know, more impressive the second games have just become in general. And I think, like, I'm going to be talking about Hellblade 2 at the end of the year. Oh my god, I have another game. I literally was, because I've been playing Balatro, I'm like, oh, this is my game of the year. And then I played Persona 3 Reload, I'm like, oh, this is my game of the year. And then I've been playing, like, Animal Well and Crab Souls. I've been playing another Crab's Treasure.
Yeah, Crab Treasure, yeah.
People were saying 2023 is a good year for video games. 2024 is really fucking good, too.
I'm running halfway through.
Yeah. But yeah, thanks for joining me, and we'll see you next time. Goodbye.
No worries. Goodbye.